Okay, so good morning, everybody. I've just started the webinar, so thank you very much for all of those who were just waiting in the room there, just while we got ourselves in order. Welcome to our virtual workshop here this morning at TMA. So I'll just give it a moment or two just for the delegates to come in. I can see them arriving still. So welcome to our session here. Thank you for joining us. So we're going to have a slightly change of order with the presentations this morning. So I'll introduce each speaker as they are about to present. So we've got enough in to start with. So again, I just want to extend a very warm welcome. Thank you for spending your time with us this morning, everybody. We know that you've got a lot to do. So TMA always appreciative of the time that you give to us to come and attend our virtual workshop sessions, easy for me to say. And hopefully it will be of great benefit to you. We've got some great presentations and presenters. Each one will have 30 minutes to present to you. And of course, there's a few reminders before we start, which I'll go through with you now. So if it's your first time that you've joined us, fear not, we can't see you and we cannot hear you. But if you do have a question, then we do have a Q&A function on our webinar session. So please feel free to type in any questions that you might have during the presentation, and I will present them to our speakers at the end of their presentation, and they can answer it either straight away or they can come back to you as well. Any problems technically, then there's a number on the screen. Give our broker support desk team a call and they'll try to help you as best as they can. And your CPD certificates are going to be sent to the email address that you registered for this event using. Okay. Brief plug of ourselves. There's our mortgage broker support desk. Myself on the left and the wonderful ladies that do all the hard work. You've probably spoken to them many times. So please do feel free. We love taking your calls. You're very welcome to give us a ring and hopefully we can help you to save some time and place cases with the most appropriate partner with TMA. So without further ado, there's the agenda. We're going to slightly rearrange it as mentioned, whilst we just sort out one or two technical faults that we're having with our presenters. So our first presenter is actually going to be Jean from the Harpenden Building Society. So I'm going to skip, just close your eyes for a moment. Don't worry about the presentation here. And we'll skip ahead to Jean's presentation. So just bear with us just a brief moment. And just whilst I'm skipping through, hopefully you've all been made aware and you know of the TMA conference that is fast approaching in a couple of weeks. TMAclub.com is the website. If you want to go to our events page, then you can register yourself. We've got over 200 attendees at the moment. So please feel free to also register. I know there's a quicker way to do this, but you can tell that I'm not a technical person, so I'm just skipping through. So just bear with me. Okay. So Jean, if you'd like to unmute and if you'd like
am
to...
I on mute?
Okay, you're now ready.
So can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay,
over to you.
Lovely.
Just let me know if you're on the right slide to start with, Jean.
Okay, and then I just ask you when I need the page moved on.
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to attend, and it's a pleasure to be able to explain to you the various aspects of the Harpenden Building Society and why we'd like you to know a bit more about us so you can send all those lovely cases across to us. So Harpenden is one of the smaller building societies, but we sit in a niche area where we don't credit score. We do everything is manually assessed. You have to approach us via your BDM initially. So you run through the case with us. We fit it all against lending criteria. We'll ask loads of questions. And if we're happy, we'll issue an AIP, which then takes you through to the broker portal. You don't need to register to send cases across to us. Anybody is welcome to place a case, an inquiry with us. When you are ready to submit your application, then you need to register, and it's a simple set up. There is a 2FA attached to it, but it's all very, very simple. There's nothing complex about that at all. That's the simple part. But we do deal in complex lending. We take an individual assessment over each case. Every case is individually looked at. If you have a case that is extremely complex, that is outside of the mandate of the BDM, we will bounce it off an underwriter. They take about 48 hours to get back to us. As well as the underwriters, we have a credit committee. So if something is outside of our lending criteria, don't think we can't do it. We can still lend outside criteria for a good case. So whenever we give an explanation, we do a presentation, we always say, Harpenden, we do this. However, there's always something else we're able to add to it. So the only thing we can't breach is our LTVs, but we can go outside for good cases on loan size, property type, all sorts of things. But it's something you will have to discuss with us. So as I say, we always take a holistic look. We are specialists for the self-employed. We've always been a strong supporter of the self-employed. Even during the lockdown and COVID, we were able to find inventive ways to get around many of the aspects of that. When it comes to income and any form of income, we can take. So we can use 100% of bonus, commission and overtime if it's earned for 2 years. Pension, rental, investment, trust, maintenance, we'll take all of those at 100%. Can you turn the page, please, Earl? And the residential mortgages, this is obviously the biggest area that we lend in. We're predominantly an interest-only lender. We lend up to 75%. The minimum requirement for an interest-only mortgage is 150k equity on application. And you can have a range of repayment vehicles. So as well as sale and downsize, you can use sale of an additional property, you can use your pension, you can use investments. So there's various different ways you can do that. We take earned income up to the age of 75. However, we can go over that for it's normally the situation where it's a self-employed, again, back to the self-employed, where they're a director of a company, but they're only there in name only. And I'm doing one at the moment, and it's a family business. They deal with theatrical costumes. The person who's coming to us for a mortgage set this company up 20 years ago, and now he doesn't have any role in that company. He's just a shareholder and a director, and he takes in income. So we're giving him a mortgage up to the age of 85 based on the income he receives from that company. But if they are hands-on, we do have to cap it at the age of 75. But again, if they're working and they're drawing a pension, we can take both incomes. If they're working and they have a pension pot that they don't want to take because of tax reasons, we can still use that income. So even if they're not drawing that pension pot, we're able to take the value of it, half the value of it, over the term of the mortgage and use that towards affordability. So it's never just a done deal with us. There's always various ways we look at cases. We don't actually have an upper maximum age limit. It does come down to affordability. So if it's non-earned income, we can lend into their 90s, but obviously there's some caveats with that. Please don't ask us to use sale and downsize of their one and only property. If they're going into their 90s, we wouldn't do that. But if they've got another property or if they've got a pension portfolio, then we would. But again, please discuss the cases with us. We can have up to 4 applicants. We use all of their incomes, all of their bonuses, all be taken into account. If they don't want to all go on the application and they just want to support the application, then we can do it via a guarantor or a JBSP. We do the manual underwriting process works every step of the way. So it starts with us. And then, as I say, we can bounce it off an underwriter straight away. Or even during the process, you will have the opportunity to talk to your underwriter. So there's no, we don't have an approach where these people are ring fenced and you can't get to them. You get a chance to talk to that underwriter. If there's anything that comes up during the process, we don't automatically decline cases. If something comes up during the process that we were unaware of at application stage, the underwriter will call you and they will ask you, what is this that has come up? And you get the opportunity to speak to your client and explain it. And quite often we can work around it, but it's not over until it's over. We do day one remortgages. So if somebody inherits a property and they want to buy their siblings out, which is normally the case, we can do that. Second home, dependent relative homes, we can do that. We treat them as if somebody is buying a property that they want a member of their family to live in, we have to do that on affordability. We don't take the rental into account for that. With day one remortgages as well, we don't do, it's hard for us to do the auction properties, but we can do it on any other one. Also, if somebody's a non-homeowner, I might be repeating myself because the slides will repeat, but if someone's a non-homeowner and wants to buy a let property, we do those as well. Unusual property types. So we have a wide variety of properties. We do the grade 2 listed, we do thatched, we've had grass roofs, we do tin roofs, we do fully timber clad. We've got one that's we're lending on that has a mooring next to it. So, and we're doing a seafront one in Devon, which a lot of high street lenders turned down because they were worried about flooding. But our take on that is if you can get insurance on that property, we're happy to lend on it. Can you turn the page, please, Earl? Okay, so again, we can accept up to 4 borrowers, taking all their income into account. Our LTVs on the large loans, up to 2.5 million at 75%. This is interest only. Up to 3.5 mil at 70% interest only. And we have gone over those as well, but case by case. So it would have to go to a credit committee for those. Can you turn the page, please, Earl? With the complex income, so I think this is where Harpenden really comes into its strengths. So with the self-employed, we do the usual. We can do the salary and we can do the dividend. We can do the salary and net profit after tax. We can take a share of the retained profit. If somebody's paying themselves a director's loan, we can use that also. We do startup, self-employed, 1 year's accounts with a projection. With those, it tends to be salary and dividend because it's hard to base on net profit when you're just in a startup. But startup years tend to be quite the lean years. So we will look at those figures, but we're looking at the projection mainly for what the income is going to be. So we need an accountant to confirm that. With employees, so we take most benefits into account. So we'll take their bonus, their car allowance, their shift allowance, housing, large city allowance, bonus, commission, overtime. If it's been consistently received for 2 years, we'll take it all. Unearned income, we also can take, and we specialize in that. So maintenance with or without a court order. If it's with a court order, we take it straight away. Without a court order, where you need to see 6 months going through the bank statements. Pension, we take various types of pension. And as I mentioned, if they're not drawing down on that, we can still use that. And that goes for investments as well. So if they have a SIP, and it has to be a cash-based SIP, not in a property, then we'll take half the value of that and we divide it by the term of the mortgage. So they don't actively have to be drawing that down. Same thing with an investment portfolio. We take half the value and divide it by the term of the mortgage. Trust fund income, we can take that providing it is within the UK. We can't take it if it's a foreign trust. Contractors, so we can do day rate, or we can treat them as self-employed, whichever way they pay their tax. But there's 2 of those various ways we can do. Foreign income, We can do those. There's we take the euro, and there's a few other countries within the EU, and then we can take the US, we take riads, and we take Australian dollars. They will be subject to a haircut, so you just need to run those past us before you want to find out exactly how much they can borrow. Although we take foreign income, we're not currently doing expats, so they do have to be working in this country. They can be going back and forward to the other country, but they have to be predominantly in the UK. We do get a lot of people where they have a foreign income, where they have worked abroad for the majority of their working life and then retired back to the UK, and their foreign income consists of their pension from the other country. So again, perfectly acceptable. Okay, Earl, next page, please. So with the self-employed, and we do bang on about the self-employed because we do love a self-employed person. So minimum of 1 year's trading with a projection for the following year. And if they have gone from limited company or sole trader, say, to limited company, which is the normal trajectory, they don't even need the 1 year. We'll take that as continuity. And we lend to all types. So it'd be limited company, partnership, sole trader, LLP. We always use the latest year's income for affordability. So if they've had a large upswing and they want us to use the income that they are currently showing on their latest year's accounts, we can use that. However, you do have to provide some evidence of how that is going to be sustained through the term of the mortgage. So if somebody has won a contract, or they've just done some overhaul of their business, they might have moved premises to a smaller, cheaper premises, and they've taken out a load of expenditure, just provide those details to it, talk us through, and we'll be happy to work on those figures. The impact of COVID, we're practically through all those now, but you still get some people that have had an impact. And we are trying to ignore those as best we can. And most of them, as I say, they're through the mill now. Business losses considered individually. Again, as I said, if somebody has restructured their company and they've downsized and they're showing better profits because of that, we will work on those figures. On the other side, somebody may be investing into their business. They may have had to buy some new trucks. They might have needed larger premises, and that has resulted in business losses. But you can see that this is an investment into the business. Then, you know, it's worth talking to us about. We'll discuss it with an underwriter, and we'll try and see how we can best help you. There are no restrictions for self-employed, such as LTI, LTV, that all products are available to all self-employed people. And again, as I said, if it changes from sole trader to limited company, that's continuity. You don't have to worry about the 1 year minimum trading history. We'll work on the previous figures. So next slide, please, Earl. About the unearned income. So we don't do RIO. And we don't do lifetime mortgages, but we don't have an upper age limit, but we do have to put a term on it. So if you're already retired and you have that income and you want to take a mortgage up to your 80s or your 90s, we're perfectly happy to accept that because we will have worked affordability out on the term of that mortgage. If you take a repayment mortgage, obviously that will be paid at the end of the term. If you take an interest only, we can do these, but as I say, please don't ask for sale and downsize at a vulnerable age. But if they have other assets in the background, then I'm more than happy to look at it and offer an interest only over the longest term possible. If they are going into their 90s, it may be that we ask for ILA just to make sure that they have taken the appropriate advice. We can still help with older clients doing the 4 applicants. So maybe their children want to help them stay in the home that they all grew up in, and they'll go on to the mortgage to support mum and dad. They can either do a JBSP, So their income is there to support mum and dad to, as I say, keep them into that property that they don't want to move from. If you do 4 applicants, and if you do JBSP, we accept all 4 applicants from all 4 incomes from all 4 applicants. The LTV is capped when it goes into a retirement product up to 70%. Next slide, please, Earl. And again, reasons for choosing us for later life is because an unencumbered property, some lenders don't like that, but a lot of older people will have an unencumbered property, and they might want to take that mortgage out for themselves. They might want to do it for their lifestyle. They may want to gift it to their children. They might be doing some IHT planning. They might want to buy a caravan and go touring. All of this is possible, but it all comes down to affordability and the exit route. Now, some might want to do a short-term mortgage. So they might be coming to the end of their current term with their high street lender who says, well, you're 70 now, we don't want to take this mortgage any further. And we can go to a further age based on either earned or unearned income. Say somebody is coming up to the age of 70 and they say, we just want another 5 years. We want to get the house ready. We're going to take some money out. We're going to put some new windows in, but we only want a 5-year term. Well, we can do that. We can do short-term interest-only mortgages from 2 years upwards. Purely based on interest only, it's assessed and worked out on affordability on an interest-only basis. And again, we take all manner of properties in there. If they wanted an assisted living property, we can do those up to 50% LTV. So if any of the properties have any restrictions on them, we can do them, but the LTV is capped at 50%. Next slide, please, Earl. So again, affordability. So we've touched on what types of income we can take towards affordability, but we also don't have an LTI cap. Now, we can lend up to 6 times income, and we have seen it on several occasions, but that's not for everybody. So bear in mind, when you use our calculator, you'll find that it is we are quite generous with our income multiples, but not everybody will be eligible for 6 times. So it's the ones who have a good or a steady income with low expenditure, they tend to get the best result. And again, all 4 applicants can be taken into account, and you will take all of these when assessing affordability. The term will be dictated by the eldest applicant's age, and that goes for JBSP as well. So if it's mum and dad acting as joint borrower for their children, if they are using earned income, that age will be restricted up to the age of 75. And next slide, please, Earl. Self-build. Obviously a specialist area which takes a whole presentation of its own, so I'll just touch on it lightly, but we've always been in the self-build area, and we have seen it grown over the years. Obviously with the likes of the programs of Grand Design, it sparked a lot of interest, but not everybody's in that league. Some people are gifted plots of land. We're seeing a lot of this where farmers are gifting plots of land to their children for them to build, and we can do all of this. We can do from the ground up, we can do knock down, rebuild, we'll do conversions. You can convert 2 properties into 1, you can convert 1 back into 2, you can live in 1, sell or let the other one. You can build up to 3 properties, 1 of which will be your main residence. The other 2 you can sell or let out. So for smaller developers, they've all got to be in individual names. We don't lend to limited companies. We do Class Q bond conversions. We do a lot of the conversions where people are knocking properties back, where, especially in London, where they were converted into flats. And now people are rediscovering these areas and they want to put them back into family homes. So again, it is a specialist area, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but do be aware this is something we do, and give us a call, pick up the phone, and always give us a call. We'll talk it through. We will, and the thing is with these, we hold your hand all the way through. So I'm coming near the end. So next slide, please, Earl. Buy-to-lets. Now, we're not a huge buy-to-let lender. We only lend to individuals and we don't have any fixed rates. But what we can offer you is non-homeowners, first-time buyers, first-time landlords, an unusual property type. We have no maximum age. We can top slice. Our ICR is quite generous at 140 at 5.5%, and we do not differentiate between lower and higher rate taxpayers. You get a max of 75% up to 1.25 million, and we will allow up to 3 buy-to-lets. We don't lend to portfolio landlords. You do need a minimum income of 30k, and that will exclude the rent from the subject property. So non-homers and first-time buyers will probably be the area you would be thinking of us for, and also top slicing. So next slide, please, Earl. Right, I presume, Earl, I'll make this my last one because I realise I'm coming up to my half hour now. Holiday lets, second home. So we were one of the earlier adopters of Airbnb. We could see that this is where the holiday market was going to. So we're quite happy to do them. And we also do them outside of your standard holiday area. So it doesn't just have to be a seaside. We will do them in towns. We lend above commercial alongside pubs, because when somebody's doing a short-term holiday rental, they quite like the proximity of all those shops and pubs and places to go and eat and drink. We do work the calculation out on an Airbnb the same as we would for a holiday let. So it is the average of the high, medium and low over 30 weeks. The ICR is the same as the buy-to-let, 140 at 5.5. They can use it for up to 90 days for their own personal use. We do have a max loan of 2 mil, but as I said, there's always a however with us. We have gone over that for the right property. So Earl, do you want me to leave it there and see if there's any questions?
Yeah, you can do. I think you've got one more recap slide, so we don't mind.
Oh, I've got a recap. Okay.
Like. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so just to recap, and I'll run through all these. We offer guarantors, JBSP, up to 4 borrowers per application, all 4 incomes considered. Properties with annex, didn't touch on that, but you can have a property with an annex and you can let it out, or your family can use it. We don't, that will still come under a residential property. No minimum property ownership, so day one remortgage considered. Gifted deposits accepted. We also do gifted equity. Properties with 2 kitchens, properties with land and outbuildings, minimum advance 150k, no credit scoring, manual underwriting from the day one. Interest only, predominantly we do up to 75% LTV, no maximum age, non-earned income considered, earned income considered up to the age of 75, non-homeowners accepted for buy-to-let and holiday lets. Okay, I think I'm done.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that, Jean. And can I just say that the criteria that you have there is absolutely fantastic. Most of the queries that my team will take from our brokers was included in your presentation. So it just shows how you actually do. So we really appreciate that. I mean, we thank you very much. We did change the order slightly with the presentations.
Okay. Hopefully everybody got sorted.
Yeah, we hope so. Yeah, I can see that our friend George has just revealed yourself on our screens. Okay, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can indeed.
Absolutely not. I'm so sorry for being out of order, guys.
Horrible. I hate it when that happens. Anyway, I will thank you very much. Good luck, Georgia. Hope it goes well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys. It's for some reason audio was not connecting today, so I pulled out the trusty AirPods and dialed in.
Not a problem at all. We're just happy to have you on board with us now. So thank you so much. What I'll do, I've unshared the screen and I'll just go back to the very beginning so I can share it from the right place. So nice to have you. How are you, apart from the obvious?
Yeah, good, thank you. Less stress now I'm on.
Good, not a problem
But yeah,
at all.
really good. Thanks for having me today.
Not a problem at all. So yeah, once I've started the slides, if you just let me know when you want me to go to the next slide, then we can do that for you
Yeah,
from this end.
perfect.
And just take 30 minutes from when you begin. That's not a problem at all, Georgia. So
I will hope that I can drag a bit of time back for you as well.
thank you very much. So let me just get myself in order and share the screen. And then we can come in. So let me get to your slide. There we go. Over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yes, welcome, guys. My name's Georgia Perkins. I'm one of the market development managers here at Legal and General. And today we're really kind of going to look at how we can bring about maintaining your lifestyle as part of that protection conversation. So not just talking about that basic kind of covering the mortgage, but that actually there's a lifestyle that goes alongside that also does need that cover, and how to have that conversation with your clients as well. So let's get started. So next slide, please. And next slide, please. Just a few kind of learning objectives here. We really wanted to kind of demonstrate the benefits of protection kind of at any budget, and also how we can identify their client needs using some of the research that we've got, but also using the tools that we have available to ourselves as well. And understanding kind of various income replacement solutions to create that bespoke solution. It's not just about income protection, but also looking at things, products like family income benefit, of how we can really replace that income should something happen. But also at the end, just closing out, looking at the benefits of using a trust and how we can try and get more policies under trust as well. So next slide, please. This is probably nothing new to anybody. You might have seen this before, but it's just really understanding and reinforcing the idea that protection and that emergency fund really are the bedrock of financial planning. You probably have a lot of clients coming to you for the things above, certainly to the mortgage, but they might be what they come to talk about, but it's our job to really educate and highlight those additional needs, those alternative plan Bs, the what if moments, and what they have in place as an emergency fund and protection. It might be that they've not yet spoken about it as an individual, as a couple, and it's really our job to kind of highlight how they go hand in hand. We shouldn't really be having anything above those two green blocks there without that solid foundation and kind of moving forward. So next slide, please. Because I think gone are the days, it was very much the traditional aspect with protection that at the bare minimum, we wanted to make sure we had the mortgage or the rent covered. And it does underpin everything, protection. It's not just the mortgage and rent that essentially would be under threat should maybe you be unable to work, your client's unable to work. There's many other expenses which are tied in within that house as well. And also understanding that when we've bought a house or we're renting maybe as a couple, there's a lot of expenses that have been applied to that, maybe on that dual income. So needing both incomes to still maintain that house, even if you did use the money to pay off the mortgage, those outgoings are still going to be there. And if we are losing part of an income, that's still not, it's going to have a dramatic impact. So next animation, please. It's really understanding that it's not just about the mortgage or the rent, but it's encompassing everything all together there. It's still ensuring that we have those savings. We're still building towards those future goals of pension, those luxuries, and then those everyday outgoings, expenses and things like childcare are still looked after and maintained as well. Next slide, please. Now we do have our deadline to breadline research. As you can see, this is from 2022 when we last ran this. We would have been looking to run it in 2024, but given the fact that we've had quite a bit of change this year, we've got a new government in place, we've just had the budget, and it really makes sense for us to get a better understanding and the layout of the landscape research-wise once there's been a settlement period within that. So hopefully looking to build on this next year. But we have ran this every couple of years for a while now. And what we were trying to do here is really highlight this understanding around financial resilience. It's certainly a term that we've probably all heard of before. There's been many other providers also looking at research to bring things to life, understand where those gaps are. But as you can see from the slides here, the average household is actually only 19 days away from the breadline, But there's a real disconnect here of understanding the perception versus the reality. Because if we actually have asked them as part of our research how long they think they have until they're at that red line, it's actually the perception of 60 days. So we all think we have around 60 days, and it's probably been through that marketing ploy of you need 3 months savings, that idea. So 60 days tends to be around that. But actually the reality is, and certainly having gone through those kind of cost of living crisis, we've had COVID, and that the reality is it's actually 19 days. And really being able to pose those questions to our clients to bring that to life a little bit more, get them thinking actually how long would their savings last, what other outgoings do they have which they can't just cut off as well. Next slide, please. But as you can see here, as part of the research, we also asked in terms of the monthly savings needed, understanding that a lot of our clients are also saving for something specifically, and we don't want to have to stop those future goals being achievable just to use that money as that short to medium term sort of plug to keep us going. Especially when we've been able to highlight an affordable solution such as protection, some income protection, family income benefit as well. And as part of the research, 8 out of 10 people were concerned about at least one issue affecting their ability to work. And as you can see here, it does depend upon age. So the younger they kind of were, they were more concerned about serious mental health issues being more of an issue. The older they were in that bracket is actually around serious long-term illness as well. So it differentiates between the different generational divides. So it's certainly something to understand depending on who you're speaking to as a client. Next slide, please. But also helping kind of bring it to life and maybe mitigate against those risks and things that they are more concerned with as well. But there's also been a real highlight of our research is this idea around wanting to save over insure. I don't think it's probably too surprising, given we know about our own human behaviour and human nature. You like to see that money in that bank account sort of growing and growing and growing. It gives us that happy, that positive release, those endorphins to see that we're succeeding at saving. But actually understanding that really the saving side is not going to give us that plan B, that safety net like we think it's going to. It's that over optimism that those savings are going to cover everything. But also when we think of saving, we're much more aggressive savers when we have something to save towards, a particular goal in mind. Could be saving towards a wedding, maybe an extension on the house, a big holiday, something like that. And really understanding what someone's saving for, how long it's taken them to save, and if they were to use it towards keeping themselves afloat, how long would that actually last for? Really helps bring that to life and kind of break down those barriers of human nature where we ease more towards saving over insuring, certainly. Next slide, please. So we're just kind of looking at a bit of a visual here of kind of the visual aspect of how our financial life traditionally looks, so to speak. So starting from the left-hand side, you may be just starting out in work, you're a younger life, you've got very simple needs, maybe you're building up those savings to get on the housing ladder, you then manage to take out your first mortgage, you're maybe moving up that career ladder, starting to earn a little bit more money, turning towards things like pension contributions, maybe you're having to pay for things like childcare, all the way up through, gradually through this time, maybe looking at things like investments as well. But essentially, this is our accumulation stage in life, and we'll get to that point maybe close to retirement or before, where inheritance might potentially play into that as well. And we know from the stats and the research just out into the wider population that this next generation is going to inherit the most amount of money as possible. And it's certainly become more of a topic of conversation now that we know that pensions are going to form part of our inheritance tax estate element as well. But then moving over onto the right-hand side, when we're sort of looking at that retirement, we're moving into that decumulation stage. We're looking at maybe drawing down on our pension, looking at that investment income. Are we becoming that kind of bank of mum and dad, bank of grandparents as well, helping younger people or younger family members get on that housing ladder? Maybe we want to use those savings towards something, maybe looking to gift some money, and then our inheritance tax liabilities as well. So certainly looking on this left-hand side, where we've got those simple needs, but actually this is where we need that safety net to ensure that those complex needs, those financial goals that we've been working towards for retirement are still going to be achievable and attainable as well. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to kind of highlight, certainly when we think of income, yes, I think the traditional aspect has always been to cover the mortgages and maybe a reducing life cover as a bare minimum. But actually our income is the thing that ensures that we're paying for that mortgage. And so if we just click on for the stats on this one, please. Mortgage payments over 25 years, we're looking at, so if we just click on the next animation, please. We're looking at around 300 mortgage payments over 25 years. Obviously more if we've got a longer, maybe younger life, a longer mortgage term. I think it's around 2,400 on the must pay bills and utilities and loans, credit cards there, and then 1,500 on just basic cost of living expenditure really. But we know that we can cover those 300 payments, maybe with some element of life cover, maybe some critical illness as well. But we're really missing out on this 2,400. These are the bills that even if, say, we did have a claim paid out and we've taken care of the mortgage, these are the bills that go alongside that mortgage, paying for that house, that lifestyle, that are still going to continue. They're not stopping just because we paid off that mortgage. And if we look across the board there, 300, 2,400, 1,500 is actually the higher number of bills going out. So actually the need is much bigger in this area as well. Next slide, please. We have our risk reality calculator, something that we can help bring to life. And the reason why we show you this is never a better time to get help within protection. All providers have some element of tools, sales aids, and was really trying to push the need for protection to be covered. One of our calculators is the risk reality calculator. So if we just click to show how this works for you, it should then hopefully bring it up on the screen. And this is really looking at the statistical risk here of something happening to an individual. So it's by no means going to be a dead certain. It is statistical risk at the end of the day. So if we can just click onto that, please. As you can see, if we click all the way through, we've put some details in around the client's age, their retirement age they're working to, and their smoker status. And this has really highlighted the statistical chance of something happening. I can tell these are a bit small on your screen, but I think if you click the next one, it makes it a bit bigger for you. Yeah, so as you can see here, for an individual, I think this is a female, around 35, non-smoker, going to a retirement age of 67, excuse me. We're looking at the chance of being unable to work for 1 month or more at nearly 40%, but the chance of dying is only 3.5%. So when we think of this, the need, that statistical need, is actually on the other end there at that point. But that doesn't mean that we only look to cover that particular risk, because actually the chance of one of those 3 events happening is around 41% as well. Next slide, please. We'd like to highlight our claim stats as well at this moment. The reason why we do this is not really around the statistics, but it's the average age at point of claim. So it's sort of second one up there. And as you can see, for someone on income protection, our average age of claim at Legal & General is 41 years old. Youngest is actually 19. And for critical illness, it's 48 years old, youngest being 22. So you're really looking at the breadth there of the majority of a lot of people's client bank when they're talking to them about mortgages and extra things as well. Next slide, please. But what we're trying to highlight here is actually it does happen. It does go out to our general client bank. The statistics of the risk reality calculator highlights that actually there's a need more to cover that income, that replacement option there. We know statistically we have more bills going out which are also linked to that mortgage that aren't going to go away even if we're covering the mortgage as well. So we want to be able to, yes, keep you in your home, but mean that you are also able to stay in your home as well with that lifestyle that you've built up. Next slide, please. So let's have a look at the different solutions that we've got. Number one being the income protection for all. This is what Legal & General have on offer. We've got our traditional income protection benefits designed for those everyday clients, but we also have a low start income protection, maybe for those smaller starting budgets that we can then look to increase over time. Not to also ignore the fact that we have more people renting than ever, but also understanding that they're less likely to be able to get on the housing ladder as well. So we have our rental income protection benefit. If anything, they're paying probably more rent than what they would be doing in a mortgage. and they have the exact same needs as someone with a mortgage as well, needing to cover those bills and that lifestyle, if anything, may be more vulnerable given that outgoings can traditionally be that bit more. And then we also have our executive income protection. It's designed for those small businesses where maybe they don't have, and they're not on a group scheme or they need a top up. It's really covering the idea of employee sick pay as well. Next slide, please. But we also have another option that we can bring in when we think of income replacement. We're talking about family income benefit here. It means that your customers' loved ones can afford their lifestyle. That's actually a relatively cheap add-on product here, but also that USP for yourselves is it cannot be compared online by a customer. So this is a really strong point in the value of yourself as an advisor that you can bring in when we think of family income benefit. It also does have the flexibility around how it can pay out. So it can be set up to cover those bills for that critical illness and life cover. But if they ever needed to convert to that bulk amount of payment, that can happen should circumstances change. It's also underwritten on that, not that full amount, that lesser amount as well. So it can help within those budget and those areas as well in terms of underwriting. Next slide, please. But to really bring this to life, I'd love to kind of show the different areas of where family income benefit comes in. It's brilliant for those renters where they could risk losing their home if they didn't pay the rent in the same way that you could with a mortgage. It also helps maybe with those high net worth clients that you have where it's funding education. You've been able to cover things like university, private school fees, but also nursery, which can be almost probably in a lot of instances more expensive than private school fees. Brilliant for cohabitants, so there's unmarried couples living together. You can put them under trust so that it is looked after and it's still looking at that household income. Pensioners being able to cover if their pension income is lost. Families, which is traditionally what it was maybe looked at initially, but also things in areas around divorce, maybe covering things like CSA payments as well as being that affordable option at that point. Next slide, please. Reasons to cover this. I know you can't really necessarily see this too well. It might be a bit small on your screen, but we do have this on our website. You can follow this flow chart. It really brings to life when to consider family income benefit, maybe for cohabitants and renters, which can pull up quite a small group of, a large amount of your client bank. Certainly, if you've been maybe looking and speaking to them around getting a mortgage over the line, but it's not quite possible just yet, they still have a protection need whilst they're renting or they're cohabiting as well. Next slide, please. But let's really bring this to life a little bit more with a case study. So just as a visual representation, if we click through a couple of times to bring the next two pie charts up, that'd be great. On the left-hand side, we've just done some round figures here. We've got a working life here, net income of around £3,000 with outgoings of 2,500 and the mortgage is around 500. So we're probably not going to come across this too often when people have a £500 mortgage, but we've kept it kind of easy figures at this point. Now, if they were to go off sick, they would maybe be entitled to some statutory sick pay, which is actually around the £430 mark. So if we're thinking of outgoings covered with that statutory sick pay, we still have £2,570 shortfall for some individuals with no income protection in place. But actually, if we have a look on the flip side here with that income protection, the mortgage is still the £500. We've still got the £2,500 worth of outgoings. But if we were able to cover that income up to the maximum that we can, that shortfall is going to be much smaller at that point. Next slide, please. But let's also maybe have a look at income placement beyond death. So it's still an area. So we can, if we traditionally put in place with that same working life, you've got the same net income, the same outgoings, the same mortgage, but something was to happen, if we click to the next one, we still have that shortfall, but maybe we've been able to pay off that mortgage. We took out that life cover, it repays that mortgage, that £500 per month is taken care of. But we still have all these outgoings left here that are going out. We've lost half an income on that house. But if we maybe had some family income benefit in place to cover the amount of the outgoings which are unnecessary, they're ones that we can't reduce down, we can't cut back on at all, then we also have that family being able to stay in the home, which is paid off, but also those bills to that person are also looked after. So their lifestyle, even going through such a traumatizing time, is then taken care of. Next slide, please. But to bring that to life a little bit more, let's actually have a look at a case study here. We've got a couple, Steve and Fran. They've got a growing family. They're both 35 years old and have a 2-year-old son, Ben, but Fran's expecting her second child. They'd already set up their decreasing liable kit to cover the mortgage. You'd arranged that for them previously when they bought their house, but now you really want to discuss income protection with them both. They agreed to take out 1,750 per month IP benefit each for the remaining 30-year term of the mortgage with a 13-week deferral period. It's £29.87 each per month. They've been able to cover those bills should one of them be off work sick. Next slide, please. However, 2 years later, after you've put this in place, Steve has actually been diagnosed with cancer. His critical illness plan covering the mortgage pays out, and then whilst he's off going through treatment, he has that income protection benefit also paying, so the bills are covered. But what happens if Steve doesn't recover and he does pass away? We're losing that income protection benefit there at that point. Yes, we still have the kit that they may have used to pay off the mortgage, or they may still have part of that left at that point. So what could actually make the difference at this stage? Next slide, please. Because Steve and Fran bought their house together and they have a family together, they've been able to afford all these things like childcare, all the bills, there's holidays, using both their salaries. So really for them to remain in that house, it's going to take both their salaries at that point. So actually introducing a family income benefit of £1,750 per month for the same amount of the IP for the remaining term of the mortgage would actually really benefit them at that moment. It would continue that income replacement post-death, and actually the price is looking at £21.02 each as well per month. Next slide, please. So we're covering eventualities here. Understanding your client's situations is going to be vital. And we have our plan ahead, know your benefits document, which you can use. It really brings to life what cover they might have in state benefits, so you can create that scenario for them, but also what employee benefits they're entitled to. They may be on a group scheme, they may have something over in addition, so being able to tailor those figures using these documents is really, really useful. Next slide, please. But one of the key things that we always just I want to leave you on today that we want to talk about is our idea of placing a policy under trust. There's only really around 1 in 10 legal and general policies that are placed under trust. I've never come across an instance where you wouldn't place a policy under trust. It's not necessarily about being under that inheritance tax threshold. It comes with other benefits as well, such as having control over the beneficiaries. It helps your clients really visualize what's going to happen to that money, so it's more likely to stay on the books. They're more engaged in the policy. They're probably also then more engaged in things like the value-added benefits as well. But it also means a faster payment, so we're not stuck going through probate for that money to come around. We've lost that income from an individual. We've lost them. We're dealing with the trauma of that, but we have that money readily available within that trust to carry on paying those bills rather than waiting for probate. It's also really good for yourselves to help build and enhance your relationship with them. You're able to really discuss and bring that expertise around that, and also build your client bank by talking to other trustees as well. Next slide, please. It's really easy to apply an online trust. All of our trusts are online now as well. And we have our simple guide, which you can use. So next slide, please, which will highlight kind of what you need to do and what we need to do. If you do need help, maybe just doing the first one, reach out to your business development manager, your TBDM as well, and they're able to walk you through it. But it is so simple and easy to use that once you've kind of walked through it once, you should be able to do it many times over again. And what yourselves do is you complete that interactive discretionary trust document online, and you ensure all that necessary information is completed with the client. Then you email a completed copy of the digital document to our trust team. They retain a copy of the digital trust. It's not going to appear on OLPC. And then we'll take over from there. We'll validate that trust, make sure it's set up in the correct manner. We'll then confirm the information with the customer. We'll let the trustees know, and we'll upload the trust to our back office system so it's there as well. Next slide, please. But certainly when we think of that, as I've mentioned before, yes, traditionally it's there to reduce that inheritance tax, but it controls the beneficiaries. And certainly when we're thinking of many blended families now, Maybe you have divorced couple together, they're not married, they've helped raise each other's children. The rules of intestacy does mean that maybe any stepchildren, they're not going to form part of that if the couple are unmarried. So being able to control beneficiaries could be a real tick and a good option there for a lot of people. It's that faster payment as well at the end of the day. And like I said, I've never come across an instance where you wouldn't place a policy under trust. Next slide, please. So hopefully I've been able to maybe just bring some elements of that to life, really kind of pushing that basic, that minimum requirement of the traditional reducing life cover, maybe some critical illness to cover the mortgage, and actually raising the bar for our clients to look at not just that, but the lifestyle that goes alongside that house as well. Because what we do know statistically is that a lot of critical illness payments aren't actually being used to pay off the mortgage anymore. It's the most expensive benefit you can take out, and it's actually being used towards things like paying the bills. So if we can make a more blended solution more cost effective for our clients as well, we can ensure that they keep their home and they stay in it long term as well. Thank you so much. Happy to take any questions now.
Thank you very much, Georgia. I really appreciate that. So much valuable information for our members, some great reminders. We really appreciate that. There's no current questions in the Q&A. So at the moment, I think we are good to say thank you very much, and well done for jumping on just as you got your sound sorted and delivering in such a wonderful way. No, not at all. You've done great. We really appreciate it. So if you have got any questions to all of our members, I think one might have just come in. Well, I missed a couple on the last presentation. So Caroline, I'll certainly put your question to Jean after the session is finished regarding your question on the expat return or their policy return into that particular market. So I'll get the answer to that for you, Caroline, and I'll come back to you. Alex Burns has asked a question. How does the rental IP benefit differ from standard IP? So how does the rental IP benefit differ from standard IP?
Yeah, it's probably a bit more technical, so I'm happy to actually send you some documents around that one actually. It's on our website where you can actually see the difference kind of between the two. It's really designed to mirror how rental would work and how that can change a bit more. When we think of the traditional income protection, it's obviously not just covering the mortgage, it might be covering different bills. So there's some more technicalities that I can run through. I'm conscious of time more than anything for you, I'm really sorry. But I've just made a note of your name, I can send that over to you, so you've actually got that to look at as well.
Of course, no problem. So thank you for your question, Alex. And as Georgia said, we'll get an answer to you when that pinged over at the earliest convenience. So thank you very much, Georgia. We appreciate you taking the time to come and speak to us, and we look forward to having you again at some point. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Bye. You're
very welcome. Enjoy your day. Okay. Of course, we don't end there. So next on our agenda is Tom. So Tom, can we hear you?
You'll have to answer that question yourself. I can hear you, which is a step forward.
Fantastic. We can hear your tones there, my friend, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to the event this morning. Thank you for taking the time as well.
Thank you for the invite, and again, apologies for the IT nightmare this morning. So, well, I'm glad we're here and everyone can hear us. So, thanks for that.
All is well that ends well. So, yeah, over to you. I'll allow you to introduce yourself, and as with the previous session, I'll do the slide promotion for you.
Amazing. Thanks so much. So my name's Tom Denman Malloy. I'm the intermediary sales manager for Mansfield Building Society. So those who aren't too familiar with us, we are we're a building society based in North Nottinghamshire, but we do lend all over England, Wales, and most of Scotland as well. Within that, we offer residential and buy-to-let products in England, Wales, and now Scotland as well. So a bit of a newish development for us doing buy-to-let north of the border. But yeah, really, really exciting stuff. So, just because you've potentially not heard of us, don't think we just lend in our local area. So we do lend more or less everywhere, except sort of Highlands and Islands in Scotland. So I had a quick look at our lending policy the other day when I'd pulled this together, and it's about 187 pages long. So I thought what I'd try and do, rather than try and compress that into, into sort of half an hour or so, is I'd just sort of talk about some of the more specialist lending segments we look at. As a building society, and I know Jean from Harpenden would have touched on some of these points earlier on, we're not always thought of when it comes to specialist lending, but when I look at the definition of specialist lending, I think it really fits within our wheelhouse. So the purpose of building societies was set up, many, many moons ago. We've been operating for 152 years or so. So, and the purpose was to enable folk who would otherwise be, unable to buy property, to be able to get on the housing ladder. And I think that some of those specialist lending segments, whether that's complex income, whether it's self-employed folk, whether it's people who've got a little bit of adverse credit, but I feel that they might well fit into that same sort of bracket as well. So I'd like to talk today a little bit about how building societies with specialist lenders as well. Can I have the next slide, please, Earl? And that's our sort of strap line for today. Then, so you don't have to think specialist lender to get specialist lending. As a building society, we do everything manually, so all our cases are assessed by people. We don't have any computer-based decisioning. Everything is assessed by a human, and what that means is we can take a view on things. So rather than some of the I'll pick on the high street lenders, which perhaps a bit more like the sausage machine. They'll sort of sell them cheap, stack them high. We're the other end of that. We want to take the time to look at every case and understand it and judge it on its merits. If I could have the next slide, please, Earl. So I did a little bit of digging, and I tried to find a definition of specialist lending, and this is what I've come up with. So this is specialist lending says it is a segment of the market providing finance to borrowers with non-standard circumstances. And again, that I think that sort of plays perfectly into our space. So I'll run a little bit about how we work and then talk about how those non-standard circumstances fit that. So how we work, we've got a broker support team. They are available by phone or by email. We are working on a chat facility as well, which will be coming probably next year now. But when that chat facility comes live, it won't be a bot; it will be manned by a person. We offer dips, the soft footprint up front, and our dips are probably a little bit more thorough than maybe what I'm used to with some of the high street lenders. But the reason we do that is that our dips are really thorough. So if we say yes at a dip, as long as everything you've told us is true, or the client's told you is true, more importantly, there's no reason that should fall down the application. So we'll do a credit check at dip. We'll check out the property if we'd like us to. We can look at accounts if you'd like us to and understand what income we're prepared to use from those. We will, any questions we need to ask, we'll ask them up front. We'll also get them reviewed by our underwriters if we need to, so we can get a really thorough decision on those. And that's my next point, is that we've got access to decision makers. We're not a enormous organisation where you can't get hold of people. Our underwriters, they'll answer the phone, they'll speak to you about cases. If they've got questions, I'll pick the phone up and ask you and say, I've seen this on a bank statement, just talk me through what this is. This is and this is the way we work. We have daily meetings with our underwriters. I sit about 4 meters away from my head of credit, so I can go and speak to those people. Same as the underwriters or underwriting manager, even the CEO. We're all in the same office. So we can get hold of people really, really easily. And you get direct access to an underwriter as well. So when you've got an application, you'll have an underwriter and a processor assigned to it, and they'll be your point of call throughout the application. It's not a call center type operation where you ring up, you press 1 for this, press 2 for that. It's nothing like that at all. They'll give you their direct access, so they'll have their email address and direct phone number, and you can pick the phone up to them and talk to them about those cases. And the same, of course, for your BDM team and myself as well. We've got we're a modern forward-thinking mutual. When I first joined this organisation 8 years ago, we used to use paper dips, paper application forms, and we know that's it seems a million years ago now. But so we've got an online system that feeds all through. You don't have to rekey anything. But whilst it's online, nothing is automated. We want to make sure that we're taking the time to make decisions on those cases. Could I have the next slide, please? So for me, or certainly Mansfield Building Society, non-standard circumstances falls into things like non-standard credit, non-standard income, and non-standard property. And I guess that's where our specialist lending would fit. So I'll touch on non-standard credit first of all. So in our specialist lending range, is what we call our versatility range. So there's two products within there. You've got Versatility and Versatility Plus. And earlier this year, we launched our credit repair products as well. So we've got truly more adverse credit or impaired credit. We can take a look at those cases as well. So what I won't do is go through the entire adverse credit grid, but what I will give you sort of pull up some of the highlights that we'll look at. So credit repair, we cap at 70% loan to value, but we can look at things like no credit defaults in the last 3 months, but up to a maximum of 2,500 in the last 24 months. If it's more than 24 months ago, we're happy to ignore it. If it's non-credit, things like mail order, or if it's mobile phone bills, that sort of thing, default, as long as they're more than 3 months ago, we're happy to ignore them as well. CCJs, you say nothing in the last 12 months, but up to £6,000 in the last 3 years. So quite racy on those. Debt management plans we're comfortable with too. We'll even let you capital raise to pay the debt management plan. So as long as that's been running for at least 6 months and within satisfactory conduct, we're happy to accept cases with existing debt management plans too. If you've got clients with existing IVAs, that's okay, as long as we've been running for at least 6 months. And again, they've maintained the payments on that. We're fine with existing IVAs. And bankrupts, as long as they're discharged, so technically as long as they're discharged yesterday, we are comfortable with those kind of things on our credit repair range too. So they just have to be discharged. If it's on our versatility range, so it would depend on what LTV you're looking for. So versatility is 85%, versatility plus is 80. But again, we can look at a range of adverse credit within that space as well. So I'll just pull out a couple of the highlights. So again, no defaults in the last 24 months. And what we'll look at as well, again, is things like missed payments. So if it's mortgage payments, we'll stay up to status 2 in the last 2 years, as long as it's clear for at least 6 months. And then we're fine with those kind of cases on our versatility range. If it's up to status 2 in the last 24 months, but clear for the last 3 months, we do that on versatility plus as well. What I would say is, if you've got a case and it comes out, down the line that they've got some adverse credit, we won't turn it away. If you put it on our prime products, for example, we'll then say, look, it's going to fit on these products, so we can still give you an option. Likewise, if something falls down the line, we might cascade it onto one of these products, but we'll cascade it up as well. So if you submit it thinking it's going to be on our credit repair range, for example, but actually once our underwriters have assessed it and go, actually, we're comfortable with it on our versatility range, we'll offer that cheaper product for you as well, and perhaps an enhanced LTV. So there's we do cascade it both ways, but we'll tell you that up front. We're not going to wait until you're about to complete and then pull the rug from underneath you. So we'll take a look at those bits as well. With things like missed payments, what we look at is the worst status it's been in. So if, for example, you've got a client who's perhaps missed one payment, but they've not paid it back for 6 months, that might show on a credit report as 6 instances of a status 1. We just treat that as a status 1. We don't treat it as 6 missed payments. We just look at it at the worst case scenario. So that really helps the clients, particularly where maybe they've got a direct debit that sort of fluctuates. Perhaps they're paid 4 weekly and the direct debit takes monthly, and they're sort of missing a payment back clear, rather than treating it individually. We'll take a look at those bits as well. So mortgage payments, obviously, we want them relatively clear. But if you've got things like credit card payments, we're a little bit more lenient with those. So if I just give you so up to a status 5 in the last 12 months on our credit repair range, up to a status 3 in the last 12 months on versatility plus, or up to a status 2 in the last 12 months on our versatility range. On our website, and I can send you this afterwards as well if anyone would like a copy of it, we've got a grid that breaks down exactly what adverse will accept at what LTV, so it gives you a really clear indication of exactly where the product is going to fit your cases. If you've got it on, if you want it on our prime range, what we say is things like defaults, we're happy to ignore as long as they're 3 years old. We're happy to ignore those as whether they're satisfied or not. With any of our adverse stuff, we don't sort of label ourselves an adverse lender, but we lend for real life scenarios. So what we're really interested in is what's caused that adverse. What we don't want is clients who are habitually not paying for things. What we're interested in is clients who've had life events. They've lost their job, they've not taken in protection from L&G, and they've had a messy divorce, fallen ill, that sort of stuff, and they've had that life event that's led to that adverse. So I guess that's our sort of a very high level overview of our non-standard credit. What I would say is, whilst we have a policy, we are common sense. So, I've done cases in the past where they've taken payday loans last month, for example, because they've had their mate down the pub's told them it's going to help them boost their credit score by taking that payday loan and repaying it very quickly. Now we know lenders hate to see those sort of things, but because we can use that common sense, we're happy to take a view on it as well. If you've got any, credit has been registered in error, we're happy to accept a confirmation letter from court or whoever the debt might be with to say that's going to be removed. Don't need to wait for the credit file to be updated as well. So again, we can use that common sense view. Across our whole range, we don't credit score. When we say I don't credit score, we don't credit score. It's not some sort of secret number we keep in the background. We don't tell you about. Genuinely, we don't credit score across our whole range. If I could have the next slide, please, Earl. So the next thing, and people don't always think about this in terms of specialist lending, but self-employed or non-standard income is something that is very much in that specialist lending sphere. So I read a study recently by another lender, and they were talking about, I think it was something like 80% of self-employed folk believe it's more difficult to get a mortgage than if they were on a standard employment contract. So, self-employed income for us is absolutely bread and butter. Like a lot of building societies, half the people who work for us are accountants. So we're more than capable of understanding complex accounts. So if you've got clients who want to use things like salary and net profit is pretty standard for us. A lot of lenders are stick to sort of salary and dividends. We're fine with salary and net profit. We can even look at things like retained profit. So if clients are lucky enough, they're earning so much, they choose to leave so much in the business rather than draw that out. That's okay. We can take a view on those too. It might be you've got clients who've got slightly more complex self-employment setup. So perhaps they've got a limited company, which is a holding company that holds their business. They might then have things like their premises contained in that, so they pay rent back and forth. And but because we're a manual underwriter, we can take the time to understand those cases, and pick those under parts. So we'll take the time to understand that. If you've got clients with things like limited trading companies, we're comfortable with that as well. So we're happy to use most recent year on cases on our versatility range. With that, what we're after is a realistic figure that they can earn going forward. So if you've got perhaps say a business that's a new business, so they've only got 1 year's worth of accounts, of course, we're happy to use that. But it might be you've got a scenario where you want to use the most recent year because it's been a better year than the previous year. So I always use the example of a plumber, for example. Let's say you've got your first year, you've got a relatively slow start to the year, you've had to buy a van, had to buy your tools, got to find those contracts and all that sort of stuff. And perhaps you've only turned over, I'll make the numbers up, but say £20,000. But the most recent year, you've had a full year at it. You're more comfortable with the contracts where they're coming from, finding that client base. You've not had those big outlays, and perhaps you've turned over, say, £50,000. We'd be happy to use that £50,000 figure, providing it's realistic going forward. So we take a look at the business bank statements. Perhaps we get a projection from an accountant, but again, we are happy with using those too. What we say is just got to be realistic going forward. If you've had car salesman who's just had a bumper year, unlikely to maintain that, that's not one for ourselves. But as long as it's realistic, we'll take a look at going forward. So if you've got limited trading history, that's absolutely fine. It might be something as simple as, I say simple, but someone who's gone from a sole trader to a limited company. If I pick on the plumber again, whether you're a sole trader or a limited company, your company entity doesn't make you any better or worse at plumbing. It's just for tax reasons. So we can accept that as well. We don't treat that like a new company. We just look at a combination of the net profit from the sole trader, and then the salary and dividends. We can use that combination of the two as well. It might be you've got clients looking to raise for business purposes, and we're comfortable with that on our versatility range too. So with someone who's raising for business purposes, what we don't want to cash inject into a struggling business. But what we can take a view on is clients who are looking to further their business or invest in a business. So perhaps you've got clients who are solicitors who are buying into a practice or an accountancy, something like that. It's quite a common one we see. It might be they just want to raise against their residential property to purchase, additional business premises or invest in that business and expand the business. Did one recently, chap who's a dentist, again looking to, buy additional premises to expand the business as well. Might be they are buying into a business they've got nothing to do with. It's just a business that's a going concern. And again, we can raise for those as well. We wanted a little bit of comfort about how they're going to run that, but we had one recently where the applicant was buying a friend's business, essentially. His friend retiring. He used to build sort of roadside cafes, that sort of stuff. The existing management team was staying in place. So, very comfortable, just purely a cash injection. So we're happy with that sort of stuff as well. We can see the accounts doing very well. We're happy with those kind of cases. It might be moving away from that self-employed. It might be you've got clients who are on things like 0 hours contracts. So we're seeing more and more of that in the marketplace, particularly clients who are looking to take on things like second roles are quite common on a 0 hours contract. Perhaps it's things like delivery, driving, that sort of stuff. There's a massive Sports Direct warehouse not far from our head office. So again, we see a lot of the 0 hours contracts on those as well. So as long as we're doing it for at least 12 months, we're happy on our versatility range. If it's 18 months, we'll do it on the versatility, on the cheaper versatility product. Or if they're doing it for longer than that, we could potentially consider it on Prime, as long as they've got at least a 24-month track record on there as well. Maybe got clients who start in a new role. So if they're starting a new role with their existing company, got a promotion, we're happy to use the uplifted salary as long as it's within 6 months. But it might be they're starting a new role at a completely different company. And again, we're happy with that. If they're in probation, we're okay with those kind of cases. We're going to get more comfort around them if they've done that sort of role before. But again, we can accept that. If they've got a probationary period, that's absolutely fine for ourselves too. When it comes to non-standing income, we're okay with other things that say you've got multiple income sources. You might have someone who's got, pension income, rental income. They've got SIP income, which perhaps they're not drawing from yet, or some other form of investment income. That's absolutely fine for ourselves too. So you've got those complex income streams. Give us a call. More than happy to understand what we're happy to use, and we'll talk you through those as well. And if I could have the next slide, please, Earl. So in terms of non-standard property, this is again, something we see in that sort of specialist lending segment. We do a lot of self-build. We do it through Build Store, but the reason we do, because we do that, we're really comfortable with non-standard construction. So whether it might be clients who have maybe built something out of non-standard, our policy is really comfortable with modern construction. So whether that's things like SIPS panels, if it's things like metal cladding, timber frame, timber clad properties, for example, whether it's built out of all the weird and wonderful things people build properties out of now, that's okay with that. What we'll do, we can send it to our valuers ahead of the application to get a bit of informal comment on it to understand whether it's something we'd look at. We did originally sort of have a policy that outlined exactly what we'd accept, but the reality is that building methods move on so quickly that we're much more comfortable, just getting our valuers to take a view on these different bits as well. So steel frames we're good with, let's say timber frame, timber clad we get a lot of, all that sort of stuff. So non-standard construction is really something we're comfortable with. It might be you've got a property that's a old farm building, for example. We see a lot of, particularly barn conversions. We see quite a number of, but perhaps you've got a property then with a large acreage, or so we say that our policy is silent actually on what we'll accept in terms of a maximum acreage. So I've done cases in the past that 40 is probably about the biggest I've got through. 10, 15 we seem to be generally pretty comfortable with, which I think is a number that sort of kicks out a lot of lenders. What we probably want on those ones is if you've got a large acreage, it's going to, it's going to mean some upkeep. And if that's not kept up, it perhaps would have an impact on the value of our property. So we want to make sure they've got good affordability or some understanding of how they're going to maintain that land. It might be something as simple as, they know the local farmer, they're going to stick a few sheep on the grass, that saves mowing it or whatever it might be. It's just understanding what they're doing with that land as well. Might be that alongside that is an agricultural tie, which we're comfortable with too. So, some agricultural ties are really, really loose. You sell eggs out the back and it ticks a box. Some of them are a lot tighter. You've got to be a 15th generation pig farmer from this tiny little village, middle of nowhere. We're going to be a little bit more uncomfortable with those because if we were to repossess, makes it a little bit more difficult for us to sell it on. But again, if you've got a copy of that tie, send it over. More than happy to take a look at those for you. It might be just sort of keeping on the agricultural theme that you've got a property with a small holding. We're okay with that too. Perhaps you've got a stables on site, something like that. Again, as long as it's not for commercial use, we can get comfortable with those bits too. But if it's something a little bit more commercial, where maybe you've got a cattery or kennels on site, something like that, we can generally get those over the line with our underwriters as well. They love animals, so we can get comfortable with those. What I would say with those kind of cases is, we want a cattery on the side of a house, not a house on the side of a cattery. So it's really just understanding what they're doing with those two. It might be you've got a property that was perhaps never built for residential usage. So we've lent on things like windmills in the past, lighthouses, all those sort of weird and wonderful stuff. Probably not going to come across your desk very regularly, but we can take a look at those too. Things like annexes, we're really comfortable with, particularly sort of post-pandemic when we couldn't travel abroad as much. We saw the holiday let market absolutely booming. So, and anyone who's lucky enough to have perhaps a holiday cottage on site or an annex they're going to start using as a holiday let, we are comfortable with those sort of cases too. So, particularly when you've got folk in places like Devon and Cornwall, Lake District, where absolutely I can see that working as a holiday let. A holiday let proposition, they don't have to be in a holiday let area, which want proof it's going to let rent out that way. I live in Sheffield, and believe me, no one's come up here for holiday bet, but as long as it values up that way, we're comfortable with it. It might be you've got clients looking to do things like concessionary purchase, and we're seeing more and more of this so we can, particularly where landlords are offloading their property, where it's just not worth it anymore. So perhaps they're selling to a long-standing tenant, and they're looking to discount that purchase. So as long as they're discounting it by 20% or more, we'll happily lend up to 100% of the purchase price, whether that's from a landlord or a family member. Or it might be clients you've got doing right to buy. So we won't lend on flats, but we'll lend on houses for right to buy. But we are comfortable again lending up to 100% of the purchase price, so don't need their own deposit. And on right to buy, we can even do it to 110% of the purchase price, where that additional 10% is going to be used for home improvements. So we're comfortable with those sort of non-standard property pieces as well. It might be you've got things like PRC properties. Again, we can take a view on those, but let's send it through. We'll speak to our valuers ahead of time and get that up front for you. Certainly around sort of Sheffield, Mansfield, you get a lot of things like wimpy no fines are quite a common, what can be classed as PRC properties, but we're comfortable with those ones. A lot of those sort of post-war concrete blocks, some of them we won't lend on, some of them we're really comfortable with, but send it over and let us take a view on those for you. If we jump on to the next slide, please, Earl. So I just want to touch on some of the sort of standard criteria offer, moving away from our sort of specialist lending segment. So JBSP, joint borrower sole proprietors, a segment we're really comfortable with. Particularly this typical scenario we see is mum or dad helping a child to get onto the property ladder. What makes our proposition a little bit different, though, is that we can do it on a split term basis. So typically, where you've got mum and dad, they're naturally older than their children, but it means if you're trying to do JBSP, say you've got child is 30, mum who's 60, we'd cap that out at age 70. Clearly, that's a tight term to try and do a large loan over. So what we can do is we do the maximum amount the child can borrow over the longest term available to the child, and we do the remaining term over a shorter term. Sorry, the remaining loan over a shorter term based on the parent's age as well. So we can look at a number of different ways of looking at those. Later life lending is something we're really comfortable with. We've got to age 85. We are happy to use earned income up to age 70. Past that, we'll look at pension income, undrawn income. So if they've got SIPs, that sort of stuff, rental income, just sort of non-earned income, essentially, we're comfortable with. With later life, what we get a lot of is clients who aren't quite ready to downsize just yet. So we're happy to use interest only with downsizing as your repayment vehicle. Depending on where they're based, will depend on what level of equity we're looking for. In and around our heartland, we say 150k is sufficient. Generally 200 outside of that, or 300 if it's London and Southeast. What we're really interested in, though, is proof they can downsize into something. So we're happy with those cases. We get a lot where it's clients who've got a loan outstanding with High Street. They're calling the debt in, not quite ready to downsize just yet, so they just want a few more years. With that later life interest only, we'll do it and a minimum term, minimum term is actually 2 years, and again we'll stress that payment on interest only, so we're really comfortable with those bits as well. I've touched on the credit scoring, but DebtCon is something we see a lot of actually at the moment. So DebtCon for ourselves, we allow remortgage up to 90%. We do cap DebtCon at 85, but we don't have a debt to income ratio. Any debts they're repaying for affordability, we're happy to ignore. So we certainly do see our fair share of DebtCon. Again, we want to know how they've run that debt up. But there's no maximum amount to it. So perhaps they've done a load of home improvement, for example, and then put those on unsecured. Now they want to debt con that. That's absolutely fine for ourselves. What we don't want is people who are habitually debt conning. I've touched on interest only. The biggest space we see is that later life space, but we can do it alongside, just on standard terms if they've got other repayment vehicles as well. And it's not just for sort of later life lending. We can do it as first-time buyers too. And the last thing I'll touch on is high LTV. As I touched on, we do up to 90% for remortgages, but we'll do it to 95% for purchases. And again, we're not credit score alongside that. First-time buyers, next-time buyers, we don't differentiate between the two, so we're happy with either. We don't cap it out and only do it for 95% first-time buyers. We can do it for next-time buyers too. So we're really comfortable in that high LTV space, and I think that's probably, the building society bread and butter. The next slide, I think, is the last slide, please, Earl, if I may. I'm lying, that is the last slide. So what I would say, thank you for your time this morning. If you've got any questions, I've got a minute or two, I think. But yeah, please, pick the phone up, speak to us about those cases that you're scratching your head with. More than happy to help where we can.
That's great. Thank you very much, Tom. Thoroughly enjoyed that. So much that you do, especially when it comes to your tolerance of adverse as well. I think when I first learned about how much you were willing to look at, I was quite surprised. So yeah, very good. And lots more apart from that as well. So really appreciate it. We have to get you booked into a session with the team here early next year to remind the desk just what it is that you do, because it is a lot of criteria you've covered there in a short space of time. So thank you. Absolutely,
be delighted to.
Wonderful. So yeah, you did have a question come in. I don't know if you can see it in the Q&A, Tom, but it's a specific case scenario. So I might ping this one over to you.
Yeah, if you want to send it over, let's have a quick look.
Unless you want to have a quick general answer given now. So thanks for your question, Cedric. That came from yourself.
Yeah, it looks like one we can take a look at. Obviously, it did sort of depend on the details. If Cedric, if I drop you my details, you want to send that over, I'll take a look and have a chat with our underwriters for you, or if Phil can pass details over, whichever's easiest. But yeah, I think we can take a look at that one. Wonderful. Okay, we'll do that. So thank you, Cedric. And again, look out for the follow-up. We'll pass your details to Tom to get in touch with you. So thank you, Tom. Wonderful. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon. Cheers, mate. Take care. Have a good day. Take care. Okay, so looks like Ian Harrison is poised and ready to kick off. So Ian, welcome to the event. Thank you for joining us. I'll let you introduce yourself because nobody can introduce you like you. So I'll let you do that. And again, I'll click through on the slides as soon as you're ready, and I'll try and keep up with your presentation, my friend. Thank you.
I was going to say, you better get your fingers flying here because it's interactive. Good morning, everyone. My name's Ian Harrison. I'm the Operations Director from Affirmative Finance. So start it off, please, Earl. Yeah, just keep going. What people don't realise is Affirmative is now 20 years old. We're actually in our 21st year. So if you think back over the last 20 years, the last ever episode of Friends, uh, the, the introduction of Facebook to the world, it seems it's been here forever. That's how long we've been around. My first days within the bridging and development market were quite unusual. I learned there was about 10 or 12 different companies throughout the UK, but it was a bit of a toxic environment with regards to mortgage brokers and finance people. It was deemed the last lend or the lend of last resort. No one admitted to doing bridging finance. Uh, in a past life, I was a bank manager, and I'd used bridging finance myself to buy a property when I didn't want to sell one. So I had the concept of it, but I was quite shocked at the concept among about bridging among mortgage brokers. I changed the terminology of it to fast short-term property finance, and on the back of that, it opened up different perspectives. I actually came up with 16 different reasons to use bridging finance. I'll show you some in this presentation, but the main cause of it, people used to think about bridging finance is if the buyer pulled out or for an auction. As I say, I come up with 16 different rationales, and it helped us through. Earl, just keep clicking it on it, mate. With ourselves, we started doing development funding back in 2007. If you remember, the world went absolutely mad. All mortgage companies and banks started pulling away from the offers, what they were doing. So we actually took a step back and realized that we could do development in small tranches. With us being fully authorised by the FCA, it meant we could do people doing self-builds. I heard Tom mentioned before about BuildStore. We work with BuildStore, but we work directly with every mortgage club, and people come direct to us. We don't advise, but we can do all the unusual types of builds. The lady we presented first mentioned about grand designs. We've probably done 5 or 6 of the projects on grand designs. I've done quite a few for Sarah Beanie, George Clark, etc. I'm not name dropping now, but we do the unusual type of builds. What sets us apart from everyone else is we've got our own in-house legal team. So normally when you're dealing with a lender, the lender's solicitors will be maybe in the same town, same city, or across. I'm actually in our lawyers' offices now. Affirmative sits downstairs. The 2 owners of Affirmative actually own both the law practice and the lending arm. So what could be better than an in-house legal team for any quick inquiries? We do not charge anything up front on any of our transactions. And unlike most lenders, we'll go as low as about 20,000, but can do 3 million plus. What you'll see from everything is we're completely committed to service. We're a very, very well-oiled machine. If you put an inquiry in the morning, you should get terms by the close of play. If you put it in the afternoon, it'll be by lunchtime the next day. I look at our underwriting team, and there's probably about 150 years worth of experience there. And we've now got a very experienced processing team too. I say we've got advanced systems in place. It's not, it's just all about the dynamics and how we run. As soon as a case comes in, we don't do a credit score on it, but we'll put it through Landreg, we'll go on Google Maps. We've probably lent in every major town and small village within the UK. So we've got a good idea where places are. We've got a presence nationally, Scotland down to the south coast. We'll lend in most places as long as it's not ultra rural and there's bricks and mortar. It'll be a case for us. We were the original patrons of the NACFB for the bridging and development market. And we do all the lending and funding partner of the FIBA. The BDLA, which used to be the Association of Short-Term Lenders, we're a founding member. But the big thing, I think, what we have is a can-do attitude. We will try and work out ways of doing deals because we've got the banking expertise, because we've got the funding expertise, we've also got the legal expertise. The 2 owners One's an expert conveyancer, the other one was an expert litigator. So you couldn't want more diversity within the legal profession to get deals across the line. Keep going with, please, Earl. What you'll see is Affirmatives is actually 4 different trading styles. Affirmatives was the original company, which was just 3 of us back in 2004. When we went through regulation, we created sprint loans. As we started doing development, we had constructive, and what we realized is we made all 3 companies regulated. When clients were coming to us for a short buy-to-let product, we were putting them through a regulated process. So we then created Ascent Funding. Ascent Funding is totally unregulated. So if it's a quick flip on a property or maybe even a small build, it could be something for ourselves. Keep going, Earl. What we like to lend on is obviously, with us being FCA regulated, is the self-build market, but also people buying properties for loved ones. We do plenty of all different types of structures. It was quite refreshing to hear that the other lenders do SIPS panels. I wonder how many of them do Forticrete. If you watch Grand Designs, it's where you've got the big polystyrene Lego box where you fill it up from the top and then clad one side and plaster the other. But we are a true foundations up. As long as the land has got planning permission, we'll look to lend on it. But from the first spade in the ground with no foundations in, we'll be there. If you've got structural changes where the roof's got to come off or there's walls got to come down, that's no major issue to us. We do all types of development funds, and whether it is a self-build or up to 50 units is probably the biggest deal I've done, a small housing estate. We like land to have planning, or at the very, very least, detailed outline. We'll do many, many unmortgageable properties, not just the usual type if it hasn't got a bathroom or kitchen. We will willingly take over some other sites where other lenders have let the clients down, where they've stopped funding it. So a partially built site could be one for us. And if there's no water, no kitchens, no bathroom, no electricity, that's not a problem. We've got an auction scheme where people can buy at auctions and have a ready-made fund, which I'll go into a bit later on. I heard before barn conversions. Barn conversions is absolutely a huge passion of mine. During COVID, I actually went out on many visits for the barns because they were nice outside and in the countryside. And I've got 2 different types, which you'll see. What people don't realise is there's different types of barn conversions. We don't penalise people, and we don't have different gradings for refurbishment finance. It's not bronze, silver or gold or light, medium, heavy. We treat every deal as just a refurb, whether it's new builds or just a quick tidy up on a flipper. As I mentioned, we'll take over partially built developments, but things like title split, that will be quite easy for us because we've got the law practice. Lease extensions, I've just recently done one where there was actually 2 years left on a lease, but we bought the freehold in and extended it to 999 where they brought it through. Sorry, extended it and changed it. But the other thing, what we see is time-sensitive cases where some lenders have overpromised and under-delivered. So it's got clients have got 28 days to complete on an auction purchase. They come to us 2 weeks in, and they've not heard anything, and we can take the case over and run it through. Keep going, El. I'm not going to bore you with this. It's just that many people think the bridging and development finance is some sort of dark art. My personal view is if that's bridging finance, that's development finance. They're just a mirror image of each other. One lends on the current equity, one lends on the increase in equity. Now put my sort of ex-banker's hat on. Bridging finance is a mortgage. It's a charge placed as a first, second, or even sometimes as a third charge. Generally, we only do first and seconds. We take out the first or the second if we were to do that type of transaction. But it is a mortgage. There's no dark art there. There's no witchcraft. It's just that we're much, much quicker. As I put my banker's hat on again, I was completing mortgages within 3 days. Once I had the ID, proof of address, income and expenditure, evaluation and report on title, there's no reason why you can't complete on a mortgage. So nowadays, when people are taking 2 to 3, 4 months, sometimes to get an offer out before completion, it bewilders me. The fastest we can usually do it is 7 to 10 working days, but it depends how good broker is at getting the information through to us, which depends on your client. But what's absolutely key, the client has got a proper conveyance lawyer. It's not just someone who does a bit of legal work. They need a proper conveyance lawyer to make the deals work. Keep going, please, Earl. So what I looked at is the different reasons for what people did. Now, the biggest reason, and the only reason within CMAP, is people wanting to buy a house before they've sold theirs. But I quickly learned that there was a lot of transactions going on in the auction markets, buy-to-lets, people purchasing portfolios, then did it for entrepreneurs. People have done it for machinery, have done it for stocks and shares. I've even bought a Bentley, people there. But the big sort of ticket for me is property developers. And there's different elements of property developers. People maybe buy in to retain themselves, or people will be building to retain some, sell some, and then there'll be just people selling. So it all depends on what they do. And as I mentioned earlier, unmortgageable properties, if it doesn't fit a standard mortgage, because the state of the property, that property usually comes up that it doesn't have a value, but obviously it does. And we will look at the value of that property at the state or the way it is. Keep going, please, Earl. What I designed, going right the way back, keep going, please, is I found this really interesting fact. People weren't aware the way the market was back in pre-2004. It was mainly an endowment market where people were buying properties and had an endowment running alongside. It wasn't that people were using a payment vehicle with capital and repayment. So, Earl, if you just keep pressing it, mate. I noticed that 42% of property across the UK had a gearing of 50% LTV or greater. 32% was 50% or less. 26% of the property across the UK was totally unencumbered, whether people had paid the mortgages off, inherited it, even won the lottery. Keep going, Earl. I quickly realised that 58%, nearly 2/3 of the property across the UK, could be utilised as some sort of bridging finance backup. Okay, so what I then looked at was the different types of landlords which it could help. You've got your professional landlords, where people have got properties and places of industry, students' accommodation, nurses' homes, etc., where you get through. You then get developers who are mentioned, develop, sell some, retain some. You then got what I call your dinner party landlords. So everyone stopped believing in pensions, but all of a sudden we're believing in the buy-to-let market. So they build up a small portfolio themselves. But what I stumbled across more than anything is what I call the accidental landlords, which is a phrase that's being picked up by the FCA. So I go back to where people who inherited property. So if nan or granddad popped the clogs, the property would be unencumbered, it'd be sold, the kids get a couple of quid, they might buy a new car, go off to Florida for the holidays. But nowadays, with all the property documentaries on Channel 4, Grand Designs, George Clark, location, people are more property aware and property savvy. So what they realized is the inherited property could be used time and time again, or the equity in a property is a major stepping stone for them to get into the property portfolio market. So Earl, you just need to be interactive with this next bit. So for everyone who's down south, please add an extra 0 to the property on the right. So let's say someone's got an unencumbered property, or it could be a lowly geared second charge. In this example, if someone's got a property for 200,000, they go to an auction, and at the auction they see a property that needs a bit of love for £75,000. It's the worst house on the road. Instead of then going through the process of applying for a mortgage, I could have a facility based on the unencumbered property. They could draw the monies down, they could buy the property, then draw monies to then do the remedial work, a quick B&Q kitchen, quick B&Q bathroom, skim the walls, laminate the floor. The property goes from being the worst in the street to a better standard. The clients can then remortgage it. Because they're not capital raising, they can remortgage it without the 6-month rule kicking in. They've now got the facility, 100% of the facility to use again. They've got 30 grand's worth of equity in the property and a rental income. So I've got clients that do this every 1 to 3 months. So they're doing 3 to 4 properties a year. So they're building up a portfolio in the background. The most I've done for one individual client is just over 600 houses. And he did that in just over 18 months, 2 years. Keep hitting it, Earl. So it's quite easy to see that someone can build a property portfolio in a matter of no time. And in some cases, what they'll do is if there's a big margin in it with a low yield, what they can do is sell that property, make another property unencumbered, and then they increase the buying power. But if anyone's got any questions on how to do this, I've got 5 different scenarios where this will work. Please give me a ring or message me later and I'll get it through. I'm not going to bore you with all these examples, but what I've noticed is the Coal Board, the MOD, Inland Revenue, the NHS, even the HMRC are selling off properties. If anyone watches Grand Designs, there's always a military base that's getting converted, whether it's a bunker or a conning station, or I think there was one the other week where it was the Coast Guard. It's ideals. The Coal Board have been selling off, but what you usually find is with some sort of industrial type build like that, there's always lands which then can be developed more. Keep going, please, Earl. People don't realise that big developers will sell at a discount if they haven't hit a certain margin. So bridging finance can make a quick purchase on that. Earl, just keep going, mate. Auctions, I've got a ready-made fund, but think about it where I mentioned before, if someone's got an unencumbered property, they can have that money sitting there and they only pay for the money for when they draw it down, for the period they draw it down for. I've seen other companies try and copy our model and they've got non-utilisation charges. They've then got audit valuations, and we don't have that. It's just simply a process of setting up the facility. And once it's there, when the client draws the money down, they're only being charged for the monies they draw down for the period they draw it down for. If it's repaid early, there's no early redemption fee either. So it's a nice, easy one to do it. I was going to say, just keep going, Earl. And the other reasons and other rationales to use bridging finance, business cash flow, tax bills, whether it's HMRC or VAT, students' accommodation, HMOs is absolutely huge. If anyone's around the northeast, you've just got to watch what's called a salt tax at the moment in time, where Stockton-upon-Tees Council have introduced that for all HMOs. Expats, as long as they've got a UK bank account, non-UK residents, so long as they've got a UK bank account. Offshore companies, not an issue. SPVs, British Virgin Isles, LLPs. Downsizing was absolutely huge during lockdown. Nanas and granddads wanting to be closest to the children, mums and dads wanting to be closer to kids, kids wanting to be closer to their parents. So what we could do was gear against one property, buy another, refinance or sell the property, they move in. You know what I mean? It was quite simple. Another thing during lockdown which absolutely amazed me, I used to watch quite a few of these Zoom calls, and I watched one on equity release and I was quite shocked. The nearly 60% of all equity release cases were declined due to 2 reasons. One was clutter and one was the standard of the property. And the irony was that people were trying to borrow smaller amounts of money to refurb a property. So if you're trying to put in maybe a new bathroom, new kitchen, if they were infirm, new roof, new windows. But because of the standard of the property, the equity release company wouldn't release the funds. So it was catch-22. With us being a regulated lender, I could lend them a smaller amount. So I could give them 40,000. I could retain the payments. So affordability isn't an issue even if someone's on a state pension. If I retain the payments, the work gets completed, the equity release company can then revisit, the property's gone up in value and it's been brought to a standard, equity release company then take us out. Okay, the broker or the introducer that's been having no income as such has now got an income off the equity release takeout, but also a prop fee off the bridging company. So it's just a different way. And I say it's a shotgun wedding. It wasn't. It was one of my clients. His daughter had a dream that she wanted to be married in a castle in Scarborough. There was a 3-year waiting list. They managed to get a cancellation, but they wanted the 25,000 bond. The client didn't have it in his business or current account, whereas he had an unencumbered buy-to-let, and I did the deal within 48 hours for him to have them funds and sent it across to him. I've actually done it for someone buying a barge because they didn't want to live in a house anymore and they wanted to live on a barge on the water. So, and we did the same. The guy just put it onto a buy-to-let to just refurbish it through. Sorry, refund us back. Here's what you call a classic barn. So, in the words of Lloyd Grossman, who'd want to live in a house like this? So this was sort of day one. Well, it's not. It's actually day two because day one actually had sheep and cows in it. So this was the second time I went when the animals had been moved. So if you can see this is just a classic brick barn. This was bought in for just on 320,000 for the client. We actually lent them a further 350 in stages in drawdown as the property was progressing. What you'll see is it's totally the opposite to what you do a normal build. Normally you do secure build the foundations, services, and then build it up. With this, it gets reconstructed. The floor was reinforced, and then make sure all the brickwork was done. It's then thermal. The last thing that actually happened on it was the roof. Just keep going now. So as the build progressed and progressed, it then became this. It actually became 3 separate dwellings. So each of these dwellings sold for, I think it was 550, 480, and another 550. So just keep going now. And it was a very, very tidy project. I know Cedric's on. It's not too far from you, Cedric, over in Rosendale. So, and you can actually see the other project that we've got going at the moment in time on the left-hand side. So not many people would live in that, but I'm sure they changed their minds with the views. I mentioned earlier there's 2 types of barn conversion. That was the previous brick one was a classic. This is what you call a Q class. It's an industrial build. Now, who'd want to live in a tin shed? Well, in this case, there was actually 4 horses. It was actually being used as a stable. Now, with the Q-class conversion, you've got to retain the shape. You can take bits away, but you can't add bits on. So with this build, you can now see that the interior is now being changed quite substantially. It's being clad. And when you get to the outside photos, you'll be able to see it's had like sort of zinc across it. So it's quite a dramatic difference. So with this one, this came with 5 acres of land. Originally, it was up for 1.4. It's just sold at 1.2 million. The client bought it in for 300, and the conversion cost, believe it or not, was only £300,000. So there's a really, really nice tidy profit. I'm now on deals 16 and 17 for the same client with these barn conversions. So you can see that they're really, really good. This is what you call your classic grand designs, where people sell their own house and then either move into a caravan or move in with the in-laws. One's a cold, dark, damp place, and the other one's a caravan. Now, with this, they sold their property and had enough monies to buy the land outright for 225,000. They then came to us for 320,000 in order to build. Just hit it with Earl. So on day one, we go off the current value, which was 225. So we will draw down approximately up to 70% of that build. So day one, they knock the property down, they then put the footings in, they then put the block and beam, the services, the gas, electric, the water, etc. Dates the drawdown 2, they draw down another 50 grand, and with that, they get it up to a first floor level. We're now at 47% loan to value. Keep going, Earl. As the bill progresses, they draw down another 40 odd grand. As they get round to the 65% mark, our surveyor nips back out. When we're doing a development finance, we don't have all the rigmarole of what most companies do. We have a development appraisal. They'll tell us what it's worth at day one. They'll give us an estimated value of what it should be at the end, and they'll give us it at all the key stages. So where you've normally got sort of land, slab, first floor, second floor, roof on, wind and watertight, first fix, second fix, completion, we'll have a good idea of what the build is at any stage. Keep going, Earl. So as it approaches the 65%, the surveyor nips back out, he rubber stamps that the work's being completed, and then we can lend up to 70% again. So as it keeps on going through, keep going, Earl. But at no stage during any of our builds does your client have to pay a QS. I could go to site, a member of my staff could go to site, the underwriters, the owners, even the solicitors sometimes need to go to site. We do not charge site visit fees by a member of staff. I see it many times where people have got a bill where they've got a QS fee, site visit fee on it. There's no additional fees. It's just a simple, quick revisit. If I had more time, I could show you how I've got 20 of these houses up in the northeast, which were the clients came to me for 4 million, and I actually did all 20 houses for £1 million worth of borrowing because they didn't need 4 million, they needed 1 million 4 times, and I showed them how they could rotate this. Keep going, El. It's just very, very simple mantra. We can lend on the increase in valuation. Just keep pressing El. So as the property gets valued, they can draw down on the increase in value. Keep going. And what you'll see, if the more eagle-eyed of you, if you see the right-hand side, this is the development appraisal what we get. So we'll have the drawdowns on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, we've got the anticipated value. So that's the reason why we don't need the QS to count bricks, because we know exactly where we're up to on each deal. Just keep going. No QS on any of our sites whatsoever. I heard before quite a few times about the simplistic way of underwriting. Each of the underwriters you deal with are their own credit team. They've got their own mandate. It's their decision if they want to do the deal. I've been in the industry 35 years, and I remember dealing with mortgages, secured loans, unsecured credit cards, and I used to base it on quite one system, what I call the 3 C's. And it's a practice what we do here. We do not credit score. We look at the collateral. We work out, is there a property we want to lend on? Is it an area we want to lend on? Is it to the standard what we'd like to do? We look at the capacity as how we're going to get repaid. We also look at the character of the client, whether are they a first-time developer? We'll look at them. We'll also look at if they've got any adverse. Some adverse we can live with. We won't do any credit repair with the bridge because it's a poor practice, but we'll look at doing some sort of adverse if it doesn't impact the exit strategy of repaying our funds. All we want to see on every one of our deals is an application form. It's 2 pages. It's a very, very simple form. And then there's a valuation, whether it could be an AVM or an in-person val. If we get through to the development or heavy refurbishment side, we'll have build costs, where we'll need the schedule of works and schedule of costs. Planning permission needs to be there, building regs, consent, NHBC, build zone, or any other warranty, architect sign-off. We'll always want to know how we're going to get repaid and what the exit strategy is. But because we're lawyers, we'll always ensure that there's a clean legal title. We offer 2 forms of payments where people can pay monthly if they can afford it. So we'll do an income and expenditure, but we prefer retained interest. If we retain the monies, the client can't default. And actually, exit providers like the fact that the monies are being made each month. A roll-up causes a problem for your client because the payments aren't there, and if there's a big thing that happens in the marketplace, like sort of Brexit, change of government, it causes instability and house prices could drop. So it means if you've got a roll-up, it mightn't hit it. It might go over the threshold for an LTV for the exit strategy. So it's a riskier way of lending, but retained is probably the safest way of all. This is a very, very weird one where I heard, I think it was Tom from the Mansfield mention about parcels of land by farmers. What about if you didn't have to pay the farmer? You could build the property before you've actually bought the land as such, or you paid for the land. What we can actually do is build on the land, defer the purchase of it either to the end or the mid, or defer part of the purchase. As long as we can go first charge, we can release the monies. There's so many different examples of this. I've done it for nanas and granddads, splitting a big garden so the grandson could build a property in the background. I've done it for developers where they could build 10 properties without buying the land, and then buying, each time we get repaid, the profit then goes to the seller, and then the last 3 properties are the profit for the builder. There's so many different ways, and it'd be easier. What I'd always recommend with people, go on our website. There's a lot more that we cover than sort of what's in this presentation. But if you see the big green box there, if you've got any sort of major, it's keep going up. If you've got any sort of major development, this is a sanity check, and it also goes through to, just go back one, please, Earl. It just goes back to your due diligence. It'll give you actually a plus and minus 10% on each project. In some cases, people don't realise if there's a fluctuation in the market, they might actually be at a loss. So this is a sanity check, and it's a good tool for your due diligence in your file. All you need to do is put your email address on, and this comes back to you as a PDF. I'm not going to sort of insult your intelligence. All I say is give myself or one of my BDMs a quick ring. We can run through a deal really, really quickly and give you a quick yes or no. Fill out the simple form. It goes into the office. The office will come back to you straight away and acknowledge that you've got the deal. They'll then come back with terms, either a formal offer or indicative the same day, if not by lunchtime the next day. I can actually instruct the valuation and legal straight away. I always recommend that you get your client to give us authority to do a credit search, just in case something comes out of the woodwork. But we can do everything the same day. What people tend not to realise is there's a legal file and an underwriting file. So sometimes they'll go, Ian, your lawyers asked for this, we've sent it in. The 2 separate companies and the 2 files do not come together until completion. And on completion, you get paid, well, TMA get paid the enhanced prop fee with them as soon as the deal completes. So just keep hitting it, Earl. So why would you use us? One, my passion's barn conversions. We do the whole range of developments and refurbishment. We are a true ground-up development. We don't just come in when it's wind and watertight like many lenders. We're fully authorised and regulated by the FCA, so self-build isn't an issue. We lend in England, Scotland and Wales. We've got our own in-house dedicated legal team. All of our underwriting and processing is manual. The same underwriter will hold your hands right the way through the process, and it will also be the same processor. We do not have any hidden fees. So when you receive an offer and it looks attractive with a really low interest rate, have a look at the other fees that are involved. Sometimes we do not hide anything. We don't have any QS fees. Experience isn't always necessary for development. If someone, let's say, for example, someone's worked at Redrow for 20 years and they want to do a project by their own, or it could be an inexperienced that's hiring an experienced team. So that wouldn't be an issue. So we don't penalise first-time developers. We don't have any site visit fees at all by a member of staff there. As I mentioned earlier, there's over 150 years worth of experience through our underwriting team. And with myself, I've been in the industry and I've wore every one of the hats. I've sat where you've sat. I've sat as a bank manager. I've sat as the client, and I've sat as the lender. I understand the process back to front. We've got our own in-house there, and for time critical, not an issue. After all that, has anyone got any questions whatsoever?
There's none at the moment, but I feel like I've gone a few rounds in the boxing ring there. I've never been that excited before clicking the button. Ian, you kept that lively for us, so thank you so much.
To be honest, mate, it takes about an hour and a half with all the questions normally. So
I was going to say you
you're
probably
the
need
same.
to get a seminar running with one of our events so we can give you a bit more time, because truly it was brilliant, and it's good to see some of the end results for the hard work that goes into helping your clients and the brokers as well. So it was good to
I
see
was
the
going
end
to
results.
say, if anyone wants to go and have a look on LinkedIn, I've actually put the recent one. It's a triple barn conversion up in Clitheroe. So it's gone from when it was basically a cowshed, which has been split into 3 dwellings. So if anyone wants to have a look at that, just have a look on LinkedIn and there's up-to-date photos on it.
Brilliant.
Right.
Listen, thank you very, very, very much. We appreciate it. Because of time, we're going to move straight into our next presentation, which
See you
is
later.
going to be with Roy. See you later. So let me get that up on our screen for you, and then we can introduce you and we can kick off, because we do have until 12:30. Perhaps we're going to run slightly over, but that's not a problem at all. So let me just share my screen. Hopefully you can see that on yours in just a moment. Bear with me. Thanks for hanging in there until the end for us, Roy. We really appreciate that.
It's quite all right.
Just a moment. And likewise, thank you to all of our delegates as well. So I'm just having to go back into the slides to rearrange it. Bear with me. Second, guys.
Going to say I will fill for the next sort of minute whilst you're clicking there. Just to say afternoon to everyone. I've got about half an hour of your time, but in reality, I've been asked to sort of look at and assess the outcomes, if you like, that came out of the AMI viewpoint survey, which came out at the start of last week. We could fall into the trap here of getting really sort of stat heavy, but actually I've trimmed things right down and pulled out some of the sort of key points that I wanted to highlight. So I would say I anticipate being done before time, but I've already lost sort of a third of the time before I started. So we'll see how that one goes. But like I said, I don't want to saturate everyone with too many numbers today, because I'm conscious that we may actually lose the message that we're trying to get across. And as a precursor before we get started, I would say don't judge my rudimentary PowerPoint skills. But by the looks of it, I was taking the heat off me because I can't get the PowerPoint open. So my PowerPoint skills are irrelevant at this point. But yeah, hopefully the content is more important than the effects on the screen anyway.
So bear with me. Can you see it at the moment, or is it not showing up on the screen at all?
No, I'm just looking at you.
You don't want to be doing that for too long, my friend. My wife will tell you that. Just one moment. I might have to share it in a slightly different way here. Bear with me. What can you see now?
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yeah. Yeah, so
Okay.
just start it from there. I'll give you a prompt when to click.
Okay, just tell me if it's changing screens, because it's slightly different. Bear with me. I don't know what I've managed to do here. Bear with me, everybody. One moment. Let me just start again. So apologies for this, guys. One moment. This is what you do when it's live television. Making errors. One moment. Okay, so let's just get this back reopened. Thank you very much, Roy. Bear with me. It's a virtual workshop. I think Ian is still on with us, so I'll be careful by saying we always try and save the best until last with our compliance updates. We do know that's one of the things that our brokers like to join us to hear. So here we go. I'm just going to reshare this now. So Okay, so we should hopefully be there now. Can you see that?
Yeah, we've got it cooking on gas.
Oh, okay, there we go. Thank you for your patience. Over to you.
Say, yeah, flick onto that one, yeah. So yeah, just a quick one, just to reiterate. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen to me today. Some people on the session will know me and will have met me. Others won't. I think it's just prudent to give a little bit of background. I myself have been with LSL now approaching 3 years and joined the newly formed specialist team at the start of 2024. Prior to this, I have served time as a sales manager within a estate agency and within their financial services division. I won't tell you which brand for, because people will have an idea of how good or bad I am at that point immediately. But then went on to have a stint at the Mortgage Advice Bureau before moving into the DA world for a small IFA firm. And part of my role there was cold starting their mortgage and equity release arm. The reason I like to say this and position it is sort of to show that although I am part of the compliance team and function, that first and foremost, I am actually a salesman still. So I'd like to be able to think that I'm potentially a little bit more balanced in understanding the challenges that you guys may face, rather than being a clipboard compliance manager. If you want to click the page, so yeah, I wanted to spend a little bit of time just reviewing what I believe to be some of the more interesting and potentially salient points that came out of last week's AMI viewpoint survey. The principles underpinning all of the stats and figures, though, were the concepts of working to make things more personal whilst ensuring that the consumer is getting everything in the most, I suppose, easily digestible formats with the clearest possible message. So very much a continuation of consumer duty principles, and also something that's already been sort of highlighted, if you like, during the L&G presentation a little bit earlier. Again, if you can click, so yeah, I just wanted to give a really sort of brief agenda, if you like, or a flavour of what we're looking at today, which I'll just quickly rattle down through. So just some highlights from the report. Like I say, I'm not getting too data rich or data heavy here. It's the things that I feel that we can sort of bring to life a little bit more and potentially apply to our businesses. The value of advised insurance in the year 2024 and beyond. What generation values insurance, because it was actually quite a shocking sort of set of stats there for myself personally when I looked at it. Don't all laugh at this one. How the insurers have improved over the last few years, sort of post-COVID. And then we'll look at some reasons why people don't take protection, the concept of annual statements, and then finally we'll bring it together with the AMI 4-point plan, which, to be fair, we can all sort of jump on the back and, pardon my French, bastardize a little bit in terms of using it as a way of reviewing our own businesses. So yeah, if you could go forward again, please, Earl. So yeah, looking at the key, or the report highlights initially, there were some key positives here for me. The fact that protection conversations have risen to 41% of all mortgage clients is fantastic, with 31% of these clients having a multi-policy recommendation or package, which I think is a credit to us having those wider reaching, more holistic conversations instead of simply covering the mortgage. We all know advisors or firms that do this, but is this really looking after the customer properly in the post-consumer duty world we now live in? And more so just from the perspective of almost the moral compass of doing the correct job for the clients. Moving down onto sort of consumer expectations, the client perception hasn't really shifted much when it comes to opinions on providers, with a general feeling, and I'm going to have a wry grin on my face when I say this, but they're quick to quote policies, get applications going, I suppose, but then the relationship goes a little bit cold once premiums start getting paid. I rewind back to sort of COVID times, and the next sort of statement I'm going to make was particularly pertinent during those periods, which was that actually, unfortunately, due to the lack of communication sometimes with third parties, and for me it used to be sort of like legal teams and potentially lenders particularly during COVID times, that we sometimes, as the brokers, become almost guilty by association as the people recommending these providers, which can leave a sour taste in the client's mouth, not only with the provider, but with us as well. I think moving on though, and trying to be slightly more positive, a huge plus point is the shift in the amount of clients that are willing to proactively engage the advisor in discussing their needs themselves. I think this could be due to, thinking out loud here, could be down to a multitude of different things. It could be increased exposure to products through different media outlets like Facebook or Instagram, maybe paper publications, or dare I say it, again with my silly grin on my face, even the Martin Lewis Money Show. But honestly, the Martin Lewis Money Show, I think I spent more time when I was an advisor trying to explain to clients why generic advice on TV wasn't right for them rather than why it was. But the reality is, the clients are engaging us more now. It may also be that they're being more proactive, and it could be a byproduct because of the tougher times we've had over the last 5 years. I think everyone within their family groups or friendship groups has had some sort of knock-on effect over the last 5 years, during the lockdowns, pandemics, and potential sort of mental strain that's become, I don't want to say more prevalent necessarily, but certainly more talked about. And to be fair, people's concerns or awareness of their own sort of health or mortality has become more sort of front and central now. Arguably, if we're leading the conversations though, the statistics around client-led interactions shouldn't really make any difference in reality, because we should be the ones leading it. But I think the great thing to take away from it is that there's customer-driven, consumer-driven interest, and that's rising in the market space. And I think that's absolutely fantastic to see. I think the reality is, from all of this data, when we look at it, is that we're somewhat saturated with information now, more than ever, if you like, as consumers. I think, but the role for me as the advisor is sometimes, it's going to be stronger than ever in terms of guiding people through the sea of, let's just say, rubbish, and towards the best solution for them in their circumstances. I think the last point here I actually highlighted because it knocked me back a little bit when I read it. And it's potentially easy for us to tell someone the risk of not being insured in a very sort of binary and almost generic sense. And I sort of presume that the second statistic on that page, the one that's down at 25%, would almost directly correlate with that first one at 46%, but there's clearly a disparity in there. And I think it's showing us that, yes, we may be good at telling people there is a gap, but we're not really getting to the nuts and bolts of it and really telling people what their own provision shows or where their own shortfalls are. And I think it's taking it that step further in terms of having the more robust fact finds, having those deeper client relationships and conversations, having that deep-rooted understanding of what they may need, and then actually offering them a solution. If you want to click. And click again, because I think this one's gone a bit out of kilter. Again, I've kept this slide very brief, actually, as the message on it was actually quite powerful. I've pulled out a few of the stats because I think when you write it in text, you can sometimes question the validity of it. So pulling the graphics off the report, it sort of shows that it wasn't me making these numbers up. Firstly, for me, on these, the stats that I was looking at here, was just the sheer amount of clients that are still out there foregoing advice. But secondly, it was the way in which they are interacting with providers. It leads me to a bit of a question, really, which is, what does your online presence look like as of today? Is there a meaningful landing page, for instance? Can customers interact with you online? If the answer is no to any of these questions, have you potentially already lost 46% of your potential business, as this is the amount being processed online, as we can see? As a side note as well, 57% of the total protection sales going down a non-advised channel seems absolutely mental to me. However, I think being pragmatic and looking at it objectively, it may well be that, the Beagle Streets of this world could be disproportionately influencing this figure with the generic sort of £5 life policies. The figure may be different if it was proportional to all of, in terms of based on premiums of sales sold. And I'd like to think it would heavily swing in the favour of advised business in this circumstance. However, it still shows there's massive opportunity for advisor-led conversations to happen that simply currently aren't within the marketplace. If you can click. So this one is one of my data-rich slides, so I do apologise on this one. But I've got some figures here for everyone to simply digest a little bit. I know, being very honest, because people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. The good news is I'm in compliance now, so I don't have to justify my existence anymore from a sales perspective. I know in my own mind when advising that I would believe previously that my older clients would potentially value insurance more, but maybe cost or age limited, whereas the younger generation of clients would potentially be, let's be honest, attitude limited. They may think they're invincible and they may need a bit of educating, often to no avail. But the figures on this slide point to actually a slightly different reality. From my own experience, there were multiple occasions where conversations with younger clients went something along the lines of, let's get you into the house and ensure that life is in place should the worst happen. But maybe it's more prudent for us to revisit the rest of the protection in the IP once you've been in for a few months, or at the end of the fixed rate once you've been paying the bills for a while and you're used to managing your money. How does that sound? Okay. Who the hell was I kidding? Did that follow-up ever really happen? Were those additional needs ever actually met, even though the clients are clearly showing here that they have the needs and they're actually comfortable in terms of taking out products? Well, maybe they did, but maybe by someone else who was more robust with their process. And maybe that person also picked up their remortgage when the rate ended. Maybe that client never came back to me. Who knows? But like I said, I'm throwing it out there almost from a position of being a broker in the past and knowing the mistakes that have happened across some of the businesses I've been in. And I think it's just a chance of us reflecting, if you like, in terms of, is this potentially reflective of any of your businesses and how can we ultimately change it? Like I say, the figures on this slide show that clients want to be covered. So if you can hear yourself in my last statement, we should probably, again, use it as an opportunity to reset and realign the way of thinking before seeing that next client through the door. Drawing on Georgina's presentation from L&G, it was interesting to see the pyramid of needs, with mortgage being at the tip and the emergency fund and protection being at the very bottom, forming the foundation. For me, I'm pretty sure that my pyramid was usually upside down. And again, the good news is we've got the benefit of people not shouting back at me during this presentation, but I think it's a good opportunity for us just to realign in terms of that more holistic piece of advice and the way that we work with people, rather than just giving them a very sort of generic life policy and letting them sort of walk out the door. Earl, if you'd like to click again. So advisor opinions on providers. I had to stick this one in here, but it was almost contradictory when you actually look at the data that they put onto the main slides. Maybe not surprising, but there was no clear consensus on service levels and positions from providers in the last few years. I mean, I don't know anyone that said it's got 100 times better in the last 2 years, but I think it's on a case-by-case basis. Straight-through processing will always be straight-through processing, but it feels quite laborious now when you get someone that's slightly outside of the perfect client box. So yeah, maybe with these figures, the advisors were being slightly diplomatic and pulling their punches. But I'll leave that up to you guys to assess for yourselves. I think the good news is that the regulator has recognised that the protection market as a whole is a little bit like the Wild West at the minute. I think initially when sort of the plans came out that there was going to be this sort of thematic full review of that market, it sort of caused us all to look over our shoulders as the front line in terms of people giving the advice. But actually, I think thinking about it more in a sort of more considered state that I am now, I think there's going to be a lot of work for the providers to do to make sure that things such as sort of commission arrangements, fair value assessments, product designs, even things like add-ons and unicorn products like Vitality Sick, which doesn't really compete against anyone else in the market, is potentially, I don't want to say eradicated necessarily, but made more simple to understand. Alongside this, I think there's some general market conditions that may need to be reviewed, particularly after several providers have exited the space, which has potentially weakened the competition and led to a bit of a monopoly in certain areas. So like I say, potentially a busy time ahead, and hopefully something that will lead to a lot more transparent sort of products, services, and general sort of market conditions, if you like, not only for us as sort of the advisor teams, but also for the consumer as well. And I think having a market that is more transparent, clear, and easy to understand can only build confidence in that market space. So fingers crossed again, that will have a knock on in terms of people willing to engage in protection conversations, rather than being concerned that they're simply being sold to, which I think traditionally, anything with the word insurance in it, in my mind, is almost a bit of a dirty word. So again, it's winning hearts and minds with some of this, but having this market shake-up could be really fantastic for all of us, I think. Again, if we can move on again. So I just wanted to pull out a few of these things, and again, apologies for my quite poor skills here on the PowerPoint. I am looking up to the side if anyone can see me, because my screen is on the wall. But looking at this one, number one reason for people not taking out insurance after having sort of a protection recommendation being effectively cost, I think that's absolute fallacy. I think the reality is that we're being honest with ourselves and each other. The real reason is a lack of understanding or perceived value, which will come in further down. But I think the reality is this was questions that were posed to the end users themselves. And I think there is a stark reality that it's easier for us to cite cost as a reason as a consumer, rather than simply saying, I don't see the value in it, or I don't understand how it works. No one wants to look stupid. And again, I think that's where we're in a position where potentially the market isn't as open, friendly, and transparent as it could be. And it's leading us to probably having wrongful assumptions of what the trigger points are within the marketplace. And I think this one was something that really sort of jumped out to me. I did put in at the bottom, in the corner there, that only 9% of people said that nothing would have encouraged them to take insurance. So flipping that on its head, 91% of people that have not taken an insurance product could have been sold something. And I think that's just something to think about, really, in terms of the untapped potential, if you like, within that market space that we're really not getting into as it stands. Can we move on again, please? I think just hitting back on that last slide, I'm not going to say reverse the slides, just leave it where it was. I think something for me is just, are we actually spending enough time with clients really explaining the protection element? And again, I look at this from a position of where I was as a predominantly a mortgage broker. Is the protection a bolt-on to the mortgage? Is it a conversation that we try and book in later down the line, closer to completion? Are we almost, subconsciously devaluing it or diluting its importance? Completely by accident, by the way, but just in the way that we're positioning it with clients from the onset. So again, I think that's something just to bear in mind. So this is probably the most stat-heavy slide that I've got. I've only got a few slides left, you'll all be glad to hear, being compliance. But I wanted to throw it up here for all of you guys to take it in. Annual statements or right to review is, for me, it's often been seen as potentially an underhanded technique to churn or sell more policies. That's my honest view on it, or wrongfully or rightfully, that was how I perceived it, probably post-consumer or pre-consumer duty, sorry. However, the second graphic down there, which has got the little green box right on the end that says the average time, based on the frequency that people want their protection reviewed, quite clearly highlights that the consumers believe that their protection should be reviewed every 13.6 months. I'm going to round that down for the sake of sanity and say once a year. Do we all do this for our clients? Interestingly, clients think more often than not, which really did surprise me, that it's up to them to initiate this review. And actually, if we combine this with being prompted by partners or spouse, obviously that figure went up to 59%. So again, just a bit of an education piece. How can we change this perception moving into sort of 2025 and beyond? And what could that look like for your business? Now, when listening to the thoughts around sort of the annual reviews, and some of this came from providers during the AMI statement, and some of it came from sort of AMI themselves, it took me back to a time when I worked within the investment firm, who had an obligation to send out regular reviews of performance for investment products alongside market commentary and trends. And I know how much my boss loved doing those and how much he moaned about it and how much time it took him ultimately. And I'll be honest, my gut reaction was, looking at this, that's quite a bit of work for us in the mortgage and protection space to be doing, particularly when they are usually fixed term and or fixed benefit products. Then I found that last statement there, and I've just realised I pointed to my screen, which bears no relevance for you guys at all. But the really powerful statement there from Scott Taylor Barr, So I just expanded on it a little bit, just in the bottom right corner. And I've sort of put it in my own way of saying it's not necessarily about the review itself. It's what that review actually symbolises. It's about the ongoing contact and stakeholder management. If a new opportunity comes off the back of it, absolutely, it's a win-win situation. But more importantly, it may stop business walking out the back door or having a clawback. So I suppose I just want to end on that slide just by saying how robust is the post-sales review process within your business? Is it something that needs to be or could be better moving forward? On to the next one, Earl. So just as I said, I just wanted to finish with the sort of the AMY 4-point action plan. Now, I'm not going to patronize you guys and read it out for you word for word. And actually, I might trip over my words if I try and do it anyway. But if you take anything at all from this session, I truly believe it should be the 4 headers on this page. I think if we can use those 4 headers and objectively benchmark our own businesses and plans moving into 2025 and beyond against them, we're going to be in a pretty good place. This is what the providers are going to be doing. This is where the focus will be. I think if we can align ourselves with that, it's going to put us in a fantastic position moving forward in terms of putting the customers into the centre of our businesses. I've taken a lot of time today. I say a lot of time, not as much time as some of the other presenters, but I've taken a fair bit of time talking about these bits and pieces from the AMY viewpoint survey. And having compliance on the graveyard shift is, well, let's be fair, it's a prerequisite of being in financial services, unfortunately. But like I say, I do want to thank you all for listening to me today. And I just wanted to make you aware that the full AMY report is available online. And it actually does include the recording of the webinar itself, which, because it's just through a normal website, you can stick it on in your headphones, you can go for a run, do whatever you need to do. I think it's, from memory, about half an hour long. It really wasn't that long at all. But if you're interested in getting the granular detail behind the slideshow I put together, then do feel free to head over there and have a look at it. But yeah, other than that, just want to, again, thank you for your time.
Thank you as well, Roy. We really appreciate it. Thanks for balancing us out with some thoughts for compliance at the end there. Really good. So it's good for us to question our processes and just challenge ourselves a little bit when we reflect on the things that we do for our clients. So we appreciate those points. And that brings us to the end of our TMA virtual event this morning into the afternoon. So can we just really again say thank you to all of our brokers who have joined, have registered and stayed the full length of the time. We thank you so much. We hope you found it beneficial. There are those questions that we have in the Q&A, and as mentioned, we'll get those pinged over to the presenters and we'll come back to you as soon as possible with their answers. So thank you very much. Nothing more to do really than say enjoy the rest of your day. I hope it's a productive one. And if you haven't already registered to attend our TMA conference, then please head over to the events page on the TMA Club website and get yourself registered. We'd love to see you there. It's going to be a full day. A lot's going on, and I'm sure you don't want to miss it. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Roy.
Cheers.
And we'll see you soon. Take care. Thank you.
See you soon, guys. If anyone wants to talk about the joys of the AMY report, I will be at the conference.
There you go. Come and say hi.
What an offer, right?
I'm sure you'll be inundated. There'll be a queue for me.
No worries. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.